we get a lot of listener feedback, and generally speaking, it's wonderful. It's good to read, even if we don't reply to it. We see it and acknowledge it internally anyway. And there are occasionally pieces of listener feedback that stand out. I don't have the gentleman's name in front of me, but the long email that turned into a blog post, was it Adam 1? I think that's right.
Yes.
His name was Adam FileMaker.
Yep, exactly right. That was incredible. We had another incredible piece of feedback that was sent to all of us, but was really for you. Can you tell us about this? Because this was just chef's kiss amazing.
I think this might be my favorite feedback I've ever received on a podcast. Like, I think my favorite piece of follow-up I ever heard on someone else's podcast was once, I believe it was an old episode of Connected. Mike said his birthday on an episode, and somebody wrote in the next week to say, yes. You got your birthday wrong. This is your actual birthday. And
incredible.
It was correct. And that I think is my favorite piece of podcast follow-up ever. Somebody correcting Mike on his own birthday and being right.
So good.
But I think this might be my second most favorite. So a million years ago, when Overcast first made the clip sharing feature, I can't even remember how many years ago this was.
Well, let me ask you, take a guess. What episode of ATP was entitled Automatic Kicking Machine? Just take a guess.
So we're currently in the low 700s. I'm going to say maybe it's somewhere in the 400s?
I would have thought the same, Marco. Actually, John, do you know?
I mean, you already spoiled it by saying it's probably less than 400. I don't know. 210.
Number 34.
Wow.
Number 34. Automatic. Oh, shoot. Wait. I'm a big liar. We're going to have to fix it and edit. 324 is what I meant to say.
Oh, yeah. That's a pretty big difference.
I'm sorry.
Price is Right rules. I win.
No, John wins. Price is Right rules. My apologies. In my internal, so I take the show notes that we share, and then I generate the ones for public consumption. And I had a typographical error, and I dropped the 2 in 324. I'm so sorry. I was not trying to set you up for failure. That was a genuine whiff on my part. But
also,
anyway,
don't say generate, because people are going to think you use AI to do it.
Oh, no. I create them by hand. But anyways, May 3, 2019 was when we last spoke about this.
Yeah. So that was when Overcast, when I wrote clip sharing in Overcast, I was using this API, like this, AV asset writing kind of API to generate video from a UI I was rendering. That's how those clips were created. And I dug through the docs at the time, and this was obviously many iOS versions ago and many years ago. And I had the problem I had was that the system I was using, which as far as I knew at the time was the only way to do this with Apple's APIs, every so often it would just stall when exporting a video. And I realized that if I detected that it wasn't progressing, and I just canceled the task and shifted the first timestamp by 0.1 in either direction and just tried it again, oftentimes it would succeed the second time. Sometimes it would take 2 or 3 times to succeed. And you would see this as you and this is actually still in the current App Store version of Overcast, as you export a clip, you would see the little pie chart progress meter get most of the way through and then stop for a couple seconds and then start over at the beginning. What I had built was, as I described it, an automatic kicking machine, that if you kick it and make it reset, it would often succeed. So I just built, when I shipped the feature, an automatic kicking machine that would just detect when it was stalled, kick it, and start it again until it succeeded. Well, David Watson wrote in a couple days ago to say, hey, I believe I plus ChatGPT and Claude figured out what was going wrong with your clip generation system in Overcast. I'm honestly quite frightened that it was possible for AI agents to find this. Now, what David did was, what it looks like he did was have AI decompile my binary, which is a thing people do. I haven't gotten to that point with AI yet, but it's a thing that's happening, and it's helping people find bugs and stuff, so it's great. And he said you're using this one API call to composite the graphic, and if you use this other one, it works. I was like, what?
Incredible.
So I tried it. It took 1 or 2 minor other lines of code changed around it to use this other function, this other API for compositing the image, and it works. He was right. So David Watson wrote in with a correction of my source code from decompiling my binary with AI and fixed one of Overcast's longest standing, most obscure bugs. Wow.
and if I'm not mistaken, David provided a sample project to demonstrate this.
Yes, he did.
Incredible. Just 5 stars.
He's going to get a great reward from the Overcast bug bounty program, right?
Yeah.
How about this? On Marco's behalf, David, if you want to reach back out, and if on Marco's behalf, I'm happy to send you, if you're interested, an ATP sticker, because Marco doesn't have any. I have them all. So, David, reach back out, and in thanks for doing Marco such a solid, I'll send you a couple stickers.
Yeah, this was incredible. So yeah, thank you, David Watson, for incredible feedback and fixing this bug in the most amazing way.
All right, let's do some follow-up, and since we're talking Overcast, let's continue. I would like to report, as I believe John has written in the show notes, the system works. John, what happened?
I complained about a feature that I wanted to have in Overcast, then I went on vacation, then I came back, and it's in Overcast. The system works. In Overcast Test Flight Build 1169, there is now a basic transcript search, which is what I wanted, and I tried it, and it works, and yay! There have been many builds, at least one build since then, but just FYI, coming soon to the App Store near you, whenever the heck Marco releases it, basic transcript search.
Did you happen to see the build that I shipped about an hour ago?
Yeah, I did.
Did you happen to see something else there that you might be interested in?
I saw the priority, the pre-selecting chapters, which I'm not interested in.
No, not that, John. I know what Marco's thinking.
The deleting, the priority things when you're sorting by duration or some crap. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of changes in there. I didn't see anything that stood out to me, though. There was the deleting, only keeping 3 episodes, no matter what you do, and there's a bunch of stuff.
Yes, there is a bunch of stuff, and Marco's been going hot and heavy, which I want to ask you about in a second. But I believe it's play a podcast from the beginning mode. Is that what you're thinking of?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Replay podcast.
Why do I care about that?
John!
Isn't this what you've been asking about for years?
Me? To replay old podcasts? I don't think so.
What? Well, on behalf of others, absolutely. Maybe we've invented this memory together.
I mean,
but
it's not a feature that I wanted. Maybe have people been telling me that they wanted it? I've been passing it on to you?
We've been referring to it as Siracusa Mode.
Right.
Maybe for people re-listening to Hypercritical or something.
Now there was,
yes, exactly.
So there were 2 things called Siracusa Mode. One was the playlist priority groupings, like how priority was grouped.
Yes.
That's one. But this was the other thing that I think you have always wanted. Maybe people just always do it for Hypercriticals. Maybe that's why we...
Yeah, I think maybe it was just me conveying other people's wishes. I personally don't have a need for this, but I've definitely heard people request this.
Oh, anyway. So yeah, the build I shipped an hour ago includes a replay podcast feature. Basically, this is something I have been wanting to do this for, I think, about 6 years. I wrote the server-side code to do this years ago, but... So, okay, what it is, before I get into that, is I've had this episode limit feature, and I've always hated the episode limit. I don't even use it myself, but I have it in there because it's very popular. A lot of people use it. And
I do. I use that one, so I'm glad you never got rid of it.
So the problem with episode limit is that I never came up with, until I think tonight, or this week, I never came up with how some of the implementation details should work. Because if you say, all right, I'm limiting this podcast to the last 3 episodes. Okay, well, what if you scroll back and add one that's past that? Should it be instantly deleted? No, of course not. You just added it. Like, that would be a terrible experience. But if you say, keep 3, and then you go back and add numbers 4 and 5 after, from back forever ago, well, now the episode limit feature doesn't look like it's working, because then you can look back at it tomorrow and say, but wait, there's 5 episodes here. I said limit 3. Your feature is broken. And believe me, I get those reports. I have gotten those reports for many, many years. Now, the reason why it would work that way before is I've kept a separate flag on like the user state on each episode on whether that episode was added manually by the user. So, if it just comes in because it's new and eventually gets deleted, that's different. But if you go through the list and you tap download or add on an old episode, it would set that flag that the user added this episode manually. And the episode limiter would never delete those. Problem is, if you go through and add a bunch of stuff manually, now like you have a whole bunch of stuff there, and the episode limiter just seems like it's not working at all. Now, it's so hard to figure out what should the behavior be in all these, edge cases of, okay, well, if I'm limited to this, but I add this, what should happen? And I was ranting about this to Tiff a couple of weeks ago. And she was like, why don't you just not let people add more and just pop up a message if they try to add more saying, if you want to add more, turn off the episode limit. And I was like, it can't be that simple. And I was thinking, and I was like, what would be the downsides of that? And I've been thinking about it for like 2 weeks, and I couldn't come up with one. I'm like, I think Tiff just solved my biggest feature problem with Overcast ever, of fixing the episode limit.
You've fussed about this complexity, and justifiably so. You fussed about this several times over the last several years on this very show, and it's a tricky thing to figure out, because I might want to override, like you said, but John might be grumpy that it's past your limit of 3, just like you were describing. So that's a very clever solution from Tiff, for sure.
Yeah, I never offer suggestions to this feature, but I can come up with lots of solutions that would satisfy me. But to Marco's point, well, it's easy to come up with something that will satisfy you. The problem is making a feature that satisfies the largest number of people who all want different things. So
yep.
I never suggested what I would want. But anyway, I think the main goal is to have a feature that is at least understandable. So even if it's not what people want, they understand how it works. The problem with the old system was it was not understandable to people. So no matter what happened, they felt justified in complaining that it was broken in some way. Whereas if it is entirely understandable, but merely doesn't do what they want, then at least they know, well, this feature doesn't work for me, and I understand why. They'll probably still complain. But anyway, in your notes, I'm sure as you'll continue describing, you didn't just do this limit, right? There is like a little nuance to it.
Yes. So this limit, this was also, this limit has always been imposed server side. The server side logic would, when an episode came in and you synced to the server, it would calculate which ones needed to be marked as deleted and delete them. And it was this is like part of one of like the hottest parts of the server code. Like this is like super high traffic. It deals with immense amounts of data with massive databases. And so editing that code over time has been something I really do not like to do because it's just incredibly high stress, incredibly high stakes. And if I get it wrong, ridiculous things happen on the server side, and some of which are very hard to undo, like huge explosions of data and things. So anyway, years ago, I prototyped a different mode for the episode limit to be in. Instead of keeping X of the newest episodes, I wanted a mode that would keep X of the oldest episodes from wherever you currently were, so that you could basically replay a podcast from the start, or even just play it that way for the first time through. Like if you had never heard a podcast before and you wanted to start at the beginning, but you only want 1 or 2 or 3 episodes downloaded at once, you don't want to download all 200 of their back catalog all at the beginning and slowly delete your way through it. That kind of sucks. So I wanted to do this with a different mode of, instead of keep X newest, keep X oldest. And trying to code this up on the server side, I tried so many times over the last 6 or 8 years to do that, and I could never get it quite right, because there's all these optimizations server side, because you're dealing with so much data when you're talking about per episode status for every user's podcasts. Like if you get that wrong, or if you defeat an optimization somewhere, the database explodes. So the stakes of it have been very, very high. And I would put some time into developing this, and I'd test it out, and I'd find some bad edge case, and it would blow my whole thing up, and I would shelf it. I couldn't get it right. Well, I had the idea recently, as I'm rewriting the episode limit to be this hard and forced thing, why don't I just do it all client side? Why am I doing any of this server side? No one uses the web app anymore. I don't care about the web app anymore. So just
you heard it here first. Folks.
I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who uses the web. I think the web app looks like it was made in 1984. but I was saying, why don't I do this all client side? So when you sync with this new build of the app, the server from that point forward stops doing any limiting server side. This build does it all client side. And that was, at first, I was like, oh, this is the way to get this episode limit being hard and forced, with the UI warnings if you try to break through it without causing weird behavior for old clients. But then I was like, well, now that I have this client side, let's take another crack at doing the oldest to newest sort, the oldest limit instead of the newest limit. Because that, when it's client side, the logic changes dramatically. And it's way simpler, and there's way less risk of blowing up my database if I do something slightly wrong. And it's way easier to validate what's happening client side. It's way easier to test. And so I tried to do it. I had some AI help, I'm not going to lie. And it turns out, and by the way, AI is super good at writing tests. And it turns out it works great. And I had to, there were a few like little edge cases to deal with, but way fewer than doing it server side. It's way easier because I can just store things in a much more straightforward way. So now, finally, Overcast can keep the latest X episodes or the oldest X episodes. And I even added a button called Replay Podcast that's in a little ellipsis menu on a podcast. Right below mark all as played and delete all episodes, you can say Replay Podcast. And it resets all your play stats for that podcast. Like it marks them all as unplayed. And from the beginning, downloads the oldest X episodes. And as you play them, when you play episode 1, if you delete episode 1 and you have 3 retained at once, it'll start downloading episode 4 immediately. If once you delete episode 2, it'll start downloading episode 5, etc. And so you can kind of listen through back again through a podcast.
Maybe that's the origin of the Siracusa Mode. If I want to listen to something, I want to start from episode 1 and go in order.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you wanted this. I don't know if you currently do.
I mean, it sounds like me. It definitely sounds like me because I definitely do that with like television shows and stuff. Like I go back to season 1. I want to start from the beginning, and I'm sure I've done it with podcasts too.
Oh my God, John.
I'm just saying I don't remember specifically, and it is confusing. There were 2 things you were calling Siracusa Mode, but anyway, I'm saying that does sound like me.
I can assure you, someone will go spelunking into like catatp.fm or something, and we will come up with you requesting this. Now, maybe
in episode 34, right?
In episode 34, you're exactly right. Now, maybe it won't be this. Maybe we didn't refer to this as Siracusa Mode, or maybe we're getting our memory slightly wrong. Hi, have we met? But I really am on Team Marco for this one. I really feel like you've asked for this in some way, shape, or form. Marco, before we move on, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. I have been seeing, and we were briefly talking about this privately before the show started, I've been seeing so much activity on Overcast over the last, month, if I'm very courteous, maybe a couple of weeks more realistically. I feel like you are in what is it, a peak or a valley? I guess you're in a peak. I was going to say fit or spurt. I can never remember which one's right. But you're really making progress here. What is happening? Are you just in one of those times when you're super duper productive? Are you just the world's best AI dictator, director person? What is happening?
Kind of maybe all of that or some of all of that. So
fair.
Here's what's going on. So when as I described, I was having Fable help me tackle some of Overcast's longest standing bugs. These were things that were just stumping me for months or years. And it was just such a burden. I was very discouraged because it was so difficult for me to keep working on Overcast, like mentally, because no matter what I did, there were these this relatively small number of just very difficult bugs I couldn't figure out. And all the reviews, all the stars, all of the emails, all the posts, they would all be dominated by people saying, yeah, that thing you did, that's nice, but why haven't you fixed this? And honestly, I couldn't blame them, because many of those bugs were pretty annoying or pretty interfering with people's workflows and stuff. So I get it, but that just made it so hard to motivate myself to work on Overcast at all, because it just felt I had this boulder resting on me that I just couldn't get off, and I couldn't move forward at all. Meanwhile, all these years, I've had my own wish list of things that I would love to do. I know what people request because I read them. So I know what people want. I know what I want. And all this time, I just told the story about how I've been trying to keep X oldest episodes for like 6 years. There's lots of features like that. There's lots of things that I have tried to build for years, some of which I have even started to build or built most of, and then just couldn't get it to ship. I couldn't get it good enough to ship, or I couldn't finish it, or I couldn't account for some kind of edge cases, and therefore it was kind of unshippable until I did, or that's why I would shelve it or whatever. There are so many of those features. Now that Claude helped me get, by the way, Claude is a past and probably future sponsor of our show. Now that using AI, in this case Claude Fable, but I'm sure it doesn't really matter which one I'm using. Now that that's helped me find and fix some of these big nasty bugs, it has lifted this burden off of me, and now I am free and empowered to go start working on these other things that I've been wanting to work on. And it's delightful, because everything you've seen me do in the last few weeks, in all this crazy barrage of beta builds,
yeah,
none of these are brand new ideas that I just had today. This is stuff I've been waiting for years to ship. And with the help of AI to get me past the crazy bugs, the test suites, like some of the really boring implementation details, I can now do it. And I think I am a pretty good director of AI. Like when I write the spec to a prompt to find some kind of, class of bug or investigate something or do an audit or generate tests, I think I'm pretty good at writing those. Like it's proving to be a strength of mine. And then I look at the code it writes and see there's a couple of things that I think really work in my favor. Like I've seen when you have AI write like a whole app from scratch, it's kind of a mess. Like it works, but the code organization is a mess. The performance in a lot of ways is a mess. It's not good when it's totally inventing everything from nothing and totally unbounded. But when you have it work in an existing code base and you're just having it like, hey, this feature that I wrote 3/4 of 6 years ago, please finish it. It can do that with your code and with your code style and in your architecture that you designed and built over years. When it's focused like that, when it's kind of bounded into a smaller problem set, it isn't inventing a whole app or a whole feature by itself. It's like taking what you already did and just adding a couple of things or fixing a couple of bugs. Then you look at like the total number of lines of code it's writing is very small. So that makes it easier to review as the human. So I'm able to say, hey, fix or finish this feature that I wrote, and then I see what it did. And I'm like, I can review line by line. I'm like, oh yeah, that's obvious. That's fine. And then, occasionally I catch something like, oh, it's editing these episodes one by one. I have a batch update function. I'm going to rewrite it to use that. So I do. It's stuff like, I'll catch stuff like that. Catch some, performance issues or unforeseen bugs or just kind of bad styles of code. Like if it's recomputing a property over and over again that I know I can just store and cache, like I'll store and cache it, stuff like that. But for the most part, what I am doing is I'm mining all of my past half-done efforts and having Claude like help me finish them and test them and prove them and write the boring parts of the UI code so I don't have to write them, and then I can go edit them to make them good. I'm having it do that kind of thing, and because I have banked up over a decade of features that I have mostly done, or that I have started doing, or that I know I had to do, but I didn't quite know how to do them, I can have it help me really a lot. So, for instance, in the current test flight builds, probably shipping in the next couple of weeks. App Store review is very, very slow, but we're working on that. Hopefully shipping soon. One of the major feature sets that I'm shipping is premium audio effects. A mono mixdown, a full genuine parametric EQ, customizable volume normalization, a de-esser, and background noise reduction and isolation. Now, all of those things except the background noise reduction, I wrote those whenever I wrote Voice Boost 2, I don't know, that's 6 years ago, whatever it was. Those have been there that whole time. When I edit this podcast, I have a Voice Boost command line utility that allows me to configure all those audio effects, and I pipe each of our tracks through that every time. For the last, 6 years, whatever it's been, I forget when I wrote Voice Boost 2. I have been piping our audio through basically a channel strip, and I have customizable presets for each of the three of us to make this show. Because I wrote this whole audio engine, but none of it was exposed in the UI. Voice Boost in the app has just been basically a preset configuration of this channel strip engine that I built. And my plan was someday I will write the UI to have people actually change this and customize it. That's a lot of work. And it was never important enough. It never rose above like the threshold of being more important than all the bugs I had to keep fixing. And now that all those bugs got easier to fix, I can go back to this and I say, all these features that I wrote years ago that I just needed a UI for, have Claude help me make a UI for God's sake, and then I can polish it and make it good. And now I can finally launch these features. And the background noise reduction is a browser tab I've had open for 3 years for one of Apple's audio units. I knew what it would take to integrate that into my audio engine, and I knew it was going to be a lot. And there was never like a 2-week span that I had where that was a good idea to use my time to do that. But now it takes less time because now I can have Claude sketch it out for me first and build the structure, and then I can look at it and tweak a few things and make it good and release it. all of these features that I'm doing now, chapter pre-selection, my little detail about how, like, if you uncheck a chapter and that same chapter appears next week in that show, it skips it automatically. I've been thinking about this. That was my, like, clever idea that I had for chapter pre-selection, again, like 3 years ago. It never rose to the top. There was always more important stuff. The sleep timer fade out. People have been requesting that since the beginning of time, since we invented sleep. And that I knew, again, like, I know, okay, do the VRAMP mul over the array. Like, I knew how to do it, but again, like, getting it right would have taken a few hours probably of my time, and getting it exactly right, making sure, like, I covered all the edge cases. But now I have some help. So now it's easier to do all these features that I brainstormed 6 years ago, or half wrote 5 years ago, or almost finished 4 years ago, and, like, I can finally do them. So what you're seeing now is me just plowing through my backlog of all of this technical credit. It's, the opposite of technical debt. Like, I've half written so much, I've so many features I've been thinking about and planning mentally, so many features. I've been listening to other people's reports of what they want and planning how I would do that someday. Now, today is that day. That day has finally come. I'm actually able to do these things. So that's why this is all happening. It is a combination of, it is, number one, I mean, it's enabled by Fable and high-end AI models. And I'm not ashamed to say that, because this is a game changer for indie app developers. Like, to be able to have that level of bug finding and that level of, like, framework generation for UIs and stuff, like, it just is such a difference of what we're able to accomplish and the quality of what we're able to ship, because we have basically, like, world-class bug fixing abilities at our disposal now.
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely had similar experiences with Call Sheet. I got myself wrapped around the axle about something over the last week or so. Somebody wrote in and asked, hey, instead of just picking one Plex server to, get Now playing off of, why can't we use all of our Plex servers? Which was completely fair. And it was one of those things where it was like, oh, I didn't realize that some fundamental architectural decisions I made, way back when, were going to make this extremely difficult. But I was able to slog through it, a lot of it on my own, some with help of AI. But especially when Fable was cheaper, I fixed a ton of bugs in Call Sheet. This is like 4 or 5 test flight builds ago. It'll be in the App Store similarly in a couple of weeks, I think. I fixed a ton of bugs, some of which I knew about, a lot of which I wasn't even aware of. But as Fable or whatever is introducing these bugs to me and saying, oh, this is wrong because this, that, and the other thing, and then I'll take a look and try to convince myself, okay, I see what it's saying, or I can reproduce it myself, whatever the case may be, and figure out, oh, it's right. And in that sense, I echo what you're saying entirely. Like, to get through some of that, like, rote work, and to do so quickly and easily without feeling like you're back in the mines, is so refreshing and so wonderful. And I had a feeling this was, a little of you, a little of, your AI du jour, but it's been very impressive to watch all this stuff fly by. And I mean, as a daily Overcast user, I can't say that I've noticed anything going wrong, or, any more bugs than I would have ever seen in any app, including my own. So it seems like it's all coming up Millhouse as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff, like, for instance, I had Claude sketch out the first version of the transcript, the find in page functionality on transcripts. I keep not wanting to call it search, because it's find in page. I feel like search, if you say transcript search, it kind of sounds like searching across different transcripts, like, to find, like, what episode did I say this in? And that's not that yet. I'm hoping to do that sometime soon, but it's not that. But to do the transcript find in page thing, that's a web view. And as I've discussed previously on the show, and I don't know what is the web API to show a bunch of highlights of text. I probably would have, defined a CSS class that's like, puts a square background on the text and everything. But I wrote this giant, like, 2-paragraph long prompt to have Claude Code sketch out the first version of it for me, and it knows what the new web AIs or APIs are to do that. I don't know that. I haven't been a web developer for 20 years. But, like, it knows all the web development APIs now. So it's like, oh, I use this new API to create, changes or, highlights that don't change the DOM and, whatever. And I don't even know what it is. But then I saw it and I looked, I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty clever. And I've read its JavaScript. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. And again, like, it is enabling me to be the director. And all these years, I have thought, I'm a decent programmer. I'm not like an amazing programmer. I'm a decent programmer. I might even say good, but I wouldn't say amazing. And now it's like I have the power of an amazing programmer at my fingertips that I can just direct. And I think I'm a better director than I am a programmer. I think my experience being a programmer and being an app developer and listening to my customers over all these years, plus I think I have decent product sense to begin with, or at least now at least. And so I think I'm able to be a really effective AI director. Because again, like when you give AI not much to work with, it'll make some really hideous apps. It is terrible at design. The only thing it's worse at than design is naming things. But it's really bad at design. But it's really good at writing code that works. And it can tell me things like, there's this web API to highlight things without disrupting the DOM. Like, great! I had no idea. That's awesome. And that kind of works both ways. I can tell it, too. Like, when I found the audio unit to do the sound isolation, or the background introduction, I told it, use this API. And first I had it tell me, like, what would it take to use this API? The complexity, the trade-offs, the power concerns, what would it take to use this API? And it did all the research, and it did the whole breakdown, and it sketched out what it would take. And there are things about it that, like, when you pipe in this API, you have to consider latency. And no part of my audio engine was built yet to consider latency coming from one of the effects. I would have had to do all of that manually. First of all, I wouldn't have even realized that at first. It would have taken me half a day to realize there was latency, and because I would just find weird bugs and not know why. Then I would have figured out, oh my God, I have to account for latency, and that would have blown up voice boost complexity the way I would do it so much. And then I saw how Claude did it. I'm like, oh, I would never have thought to do that. But that's really elegant and way smaller and faster and better than what I would have done. And then meanwhile, sometimes I get a win sometimes. Like, I wrote the de-esser, again, like probably 5-6 years ago, whenever I wrote Voice Boost. And today I had Claude look at it, and I said, investigate how I wrote the de-esser. I actually don't know how de-essers are implemented in audio software. I just guessed, based on the tools I had at my disposal, how one might work. How did I do? Evaluate how I did. Tell me what other alternatives exist. And it turns out I guessed right. That the de-esser I wrote years ago, that actually is how they work. I'm like, oh, great, all right. And it suggested a couple of minor tweaks, which I did, but it was like I had it mostly right. And that's good to know sometimes too. So like, it is such a game changer for me to have this now. And this is as bad as the coding AI models are ever going to be. They're getting better. It's remarkable to me what we can do now. And I am very comfortable taking more of a like half director, half coder role, because I am still writing the code. I'm just not writing all of the code. And I'm looking at the code that Claude writes, and I'm like, oh yeah, you nailed it. I'm not going to edit that because it's good. Yeah. The parts that aren't good, as I mentioned earlier, then I'll edit those. The parts that need performance improvements or they need UI tweaks. But I tweak the UI. Like, I have Claude write the first UI. I don't have to write the massive amount of like Swift UI boilerplate to tie things together. Have Claude do that, and then I go in and make it actually a good UI. I go in and make it, attractive, more functional, line everything up right, add the right margins, add the right fonts, do all that stuff. Like I do, the polishing work that I'm good at, and Claude does all of the like templating and rote work that it's good at. I think this is a really, really, really important time in coding, and I'm very, very happy to be finally embracing something as it happens rather than like 5 years later. We are sponsored this episode by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain name, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. Quite simply, they make it super easy at Squarespace to make amazing websites for you and your business. Now, they have all sorts of business features that really make this easier. So, first of all, whether you are a consultant or selling events or experiences, all the way down to selling regular products, physical or digital, they support so many kinds of businesses now. You can sell content, you can sell memberships, newsletters, ebooks and podcasts and all sorts of stuff, plus physical goods with like shipping and sales tax integration, so much backed by Squarespace, and it's so easy to use. So if somebody comes to you as the nerd in their life and they're like, hey, can you help me make a website? You don't have to do it for them, and they don't have to go through you. You can say, hey, go to squarespace.com/ATP and try it for yourself and see how it works for you. And they can do it themselves. And if you need a website and you're a nerd, you could like program all this, but why? Squarespace does it better, and it's already done, and it's so easy and fast to use. So try it yourself. I strongly recommend try the Squarespace free trial. It supports everything you need to get your business started, and you can see all their wonderful features. Things like SEO tools, analytics, email campaigns, those are all built in. Global shipping options for physical goods. Like, there's so much all built into Squarespace. You got to see it to believe it. So try it for yourself. Build your site in trial mode. Squarespace.com/ATP. See how it works for you. When you're ready to launch, use offer code ATP to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Once again, squarespace.com/ATP, code ATP. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring our show.
With regard to me talking about, I want to say it was last episode, maybe it was the episode before, SonosNet, where Sonos would make like an ad hoc network, or not ad hoc, like its own private network between devices. And I'd said, oh, you can turn that off now. Well, Will Smidline writes, I have been dutifully checking my Sonos app weekly since Casey first mentioned the Disable SonosNet beta, but the option never appeared for me. I just discovered that Unify's built-in ad blocking prevents the feature flag service they are using for the rollout from working. I disabled that filter and it immediately showed up. So if you're a Pi-hole person like me, or if you use Unify's ad blocking or perhaps other ones, you might want to flip that off just for a moment.
It's like my own personal nightmare of ad blocking and why I'm so paranoid about it. Like, I would never think that ad blocking would stop like a feature from a beta, like just wild. So yeah, I mean, I don't particularly like ads, but I hate things not working because of something that I did.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Oh, can I before, sorry, I totally forgot that like also in the intervening time since we last recorded, because there was a bit of a vacation break here. In the intervening time, I also got all of the Ubiquiti high availability stuff.
Oh, how's that working out?
Oh man, it's cool. It's there was only one snag. So this was for the Overcast Mac Mini's data center. Basically getting redundant router, redundant switch, and the power backup system. So that way I can just plug in all the Ubiquiti stuff into both sides of the power in the data center and not have to deal with the transfer switch for that. And it's really cool. Like configuring the shadow mode for the two Dream routers was really fun. And the WAN switch, having stuff like that is like, I feel really cool. The only weird thing about the Ubiquiti redundancy setups that I've had so far is that the Ubiquiti redundant power thing. So as I described last time, most server gear has two power supplies and two power inputs because it has to plug into two different power sources in a data center for redundancy. Okay. Ubiquiti stuff doesn't quite have that. Most of it has one regular power input, and then it has this big DC connector that's like custom proprietary DC connector on the other side of the switch or the router or whatever. And they sell basically a giant power supply thing that you can plug into your other power source and then connect a whole bunch of these DC cables to all the Ubiquiti devices that support it. Why they do it this way, I don't know. Whatever. A second power input would have been fine. But I got that. And these have to be the worst computer cables I have ever worked with. So the Ubiquiti DC power cables that run from the redundant power system, I think it's like, the UI RPS or something like that, to each device. They are basically the thickness and flexibility of a slightly flat garden hose. It is
fun.
The thickest power cable I think I've ever seen for something that is like, not like a piece of industrial equipment. Like it's these super thick power cables that are flat They sell it only in one length of like, I think it's like 6 feet long. So it's massive and heavy. And it comes in this massive box and they're like $30 each. It's the thickest, giantest thing ever. And then on the ends of it are what look like giant IDE connectors. They're these like huge rows of two rows of black pins on each one, and it's got to be like 3 or 4 inches wide, and they plug into these giant DC ports on the back of the routers. As I said, I plug everything in, and I connect it all up to the DC thing, and I shove these giant cables into these giant connectors, and they like shove in. I'm like, I think it's in. It looks like I can't get it in any further, so I guess it's in. But what direction does it go? Who knows? I put it in one way, and it like didn't quite go in all the way, and I'm like, oh, that's probably wrong. Flipped it over, put it in like a little harder, and it went in further. I'm like, okay, I guess that's right. Who knows? So I plug everything in, connect everything up, and I'm like, all right, let's test it out. And I unplug everything from the main power. And I walk back around to the side of the rack, and it's all off. I'm like, well,
that's fun.
Didn't do it right this time. So walk back in, plug it back in, see how it got. It's got to see how the shadow mode does failover because it considered it a failure. So I'm like, okay, great. Awesome.
At least that works.
Yeah, right. That did work. Anyways, so I'm like doing like, AI research and YouTube lookups and how to figure out like, how do I connect all these things? And it turns out the cables are like directionally. They can only go in one direction, but you wouldn't know it unless you look really closely that across those 2 rows of pins, 2 of them are rounded instead of square.
Oh, cool.
And so here I am in like the back of my server rack, like shining my phone flashlight in, like trying to like see what direction is what on here, like looking in the ports. And eventually I learned, if you get it right, you can shove it in even harder and you feel like you're going to break the thing. But if you really shove it, you can get it all the way in, and then a little light lights up next to it. I'm like, oh, now it's on. So anyway.
You're trying to put a round peg in a square hole.
Yes! Or the other way, I don't know. But, oh man, what a giant pain those things were. And I'm like tearing up my hands, like my fingers are hurting, like trying to get these things in. I did eventually get them all in, and it does work, and it does work great. But I have no idea why the cables are designed the way they are. I don't know why they need so many pins, because there is some communication over them, which is kind of nice. Like the Ubiquiti RPS thing will tell you when it's powering something via power. It'll tell you what it's powering, like which device it's powering. So they are communicating over these pins to tell it, I'm the switch 48 or whatever. So that is kind of nice. But I still don't know why it needs so many pins and why the cable needs to be so incredibly thick, because it's not, it's delivering, I don't know, a couple 100 watts at most. Like we're not talking about like 30 amp cables or anything. So I don't know what Ubiquiti was thinking with this cable design, but the functionality of it, once you get them actually plugged in correctly, is quite nice.
Well, I'm glad to hear it's working out well, even though it sounds like getting there was a bit of a nightmare. But what are you going to do? All right, we talked a little while ago about how there is rumored to be 9 gigs of RAM on some upcoming iPhones. And Joe Lyon, friend of the show, wrote in to say 9 gigs of RAM is achieved with 3 24 gigabit chips, which have been in production for quite some time. 24 gigabits times 3 is 72 gigabits. 72 gigabits divided by 8 bits per byte equals, guess what? 9 gigs. 24 gigabit chips are also used to make configurations like 48 gigabytes and 96 gigabytes DDR5 server modules, whereas the more traditional 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. are made with things like 8, 16, and 32 gigabit chips.
Yeah, it's kind of like the math on TV refresh rates and knowing which ones divide evenly by, or multiply out to work for 120 and 96 and 24 and 30 and 8, and it gets complicated for multiples that are not the easy doubling that we're expecting for like powers of 2, 8, 16, 32, 64. But 9 gigs, it works if you remember that 8 bits are in each byte.
Exactly. TJ Usian wrote with regard to multiple Apple accounts. I am pretty sure that the email address is what needs to be different for an Apple ID, but the phone number can be the same. Employer email address, but I still get verification texts on my phone, for example. There is some awkwardness to actually setting this up, but it works.
Yeah, I don't know what those rules are. I believe that this has been successful for some people, but in my experience trying to make new Apple IDs, it has varying degrees of insistence that a new phone number be used. But it changes so much with like the two-factor versus two-step, and now with passkeys and everything. So who knows what the current rules are? So I guess just keep trying.
Just make an automatic kicking machine for your Apple ID.
Just keep trying to make that Apple ID until you get through.
All right. With regard to ditching PlayStation discs, Jess Weatherbed at The Verge writes, Sony's latest quarterly earnings report shows that physical games earned the company just over $781 million in the 2025 fiscal year. So discs earned a little less than $800 million. A fraction of what it brought in for digital game sales, which was about $6.5 billion. And in-game purchases, which was about $8.5 billion over the same period.
Yeah. So if you're wondering why they're getting rid of discs, just the numbers alone. The writing has been on the wall for a while. If I had to guess how lopsided it was, I wouldn't have even guessed this because, yeah, that's a big difference.
All right. So we have a bit of news from a friend of ours. Do you want to talk about SuperDuper 4, John?
Well, first I want to talk about SuperDuper, which is a program for making a bootable clone of your disk that I've been using for a long time. And disclaimer, I'm friends with the developer and I was on the beta for the old version and the new version of SuperDuper. So keep that in mind. But anyway, I've been using it for years. It's part of my backup strategy. I'm sure we won't get to it this week, but there's an Ask ATP question revisiting backup strategies. And suffice it to say that I still think a bootable clone of your drive is part of a healthy breakfast. It's part of a good backup program. In addition to all the other kinds of backups you can have, perhaps the thing that will get you back up and running the fastest is a recently created bootable clone of your boot drive. So if your boot drive fails, yes, you could restore from a time machine backup. You could restore from a network time machine or a local time machine. You can restore from a cloud backup. But if you want to get back up and running as fast as possible, just rebooting from a different drive, which is the same as your current drive as of less than 24 hours ago, nothing can beat that. And so I always make that an ingredient in my backup thing. And there's a bunch of programs that do that. Carbon Copy Cloner is one. SuperDuper is the other. SuperDuper, I think, was the first one to sort of pioneer this problem space. And if you've used the app in recent years, you can see it shows its age. I believe it was at one point brushed metal to give you an idea how old it is or how old it was. And it doesn't particularly look, bad or anything, but it did look dated. And the plain fact is it hadn't changed much over the years in terms of the user experience. Now, under the covers, it's had to change a tremendous amount because Apple keeps changing SuperDuper's been around for so long. When it started, you could make bootable volumes just by copying files. There was no sealed system volume. There was no read-only partition for the operating system. Like, everything was so incredibly different. There was no booting into recovery. Like, it predates all of that. So obviously, SuperDuper has had to change tremendously over the years just to continue to do the one thing that it does, which is, hey, make a bootable copy of my main drive for me. And it had a bunch of nice features where you could set up schedules, and it would, I always have my computer scheduled to like wake up in the middle of the night, mount the drive that I want to clone to, clone the drive, unmount it, and go back to sleep. So not only did I have to make sure to run it, I didn't even have to make sure my computer was awake. I didn't even have to make sure the drive was mounted. It would do all of it for me while I was asleep, and I would just come back, and I would always know my SuperDuper clone is up to date. And if there was a problem, it would show me a log message, and I would know I had to redo it. Anyway, that's SuperDuper. And unfortunately, the product has an exclamation point in the name. I was hoping that the new version would not have an exclamation point because the beta didn't, but unfortunately, the new one also has an exclamation point. I protest the exclamation point. I think it's bad, but there you have it. So, SuperDuper 4 is out, and it kind of reminds me of Marco's Overcast rewrite. Maybe people aren't excited about backup software. I'm excited about backup software.
You?
Yeah, I know, but this is so you'll have to put yourself in my mindset of like, imagine there's a program that you're super.
I could not survive your mindset.
Yeah, imagine that there's some kind of program that you're really into this program. And you really like it, and it's great and everything. And then imagine they come out with like a brand new version of this, just rewritten from top to bottom, just an entirely new app, and not just a new app like it looks different, but like it's architected differently. It has features the old one didn't have. It's just like entirely new. You're like, wow, that seems to be what has happened here. We'll link to Dave Nanian's blog post about it, and he'll explain it. And I'll actually have Casey read the snippets that I pulled out here, but suffice it to say that SuperDuper 4 is basically an entirely new app in the spirit of the old one.
Indeed. So Dave Nanian writes, SuperDuper has had an impressive run. It has lasted in its original form for 22 years, longer than any other product I've ever been involved with over the, so far, 43 years of my working career. Let me remind you right now hi, this is Casey. Let me remind you that Marco and I are 44 years old. Continuing from Dave Nanian, the new version of SuperDuper is a ground-up rewrite, a tip-to-tail reinvention of what SuperDuper looks like, how it works, what it can do, and where I can take it in the future. SuperDuper 4 is much faster than before. Smart updates are between 2 times, and with the new turbo feature, an order of magnitude faster. As an example, my 2.5 terabyte test volume used to take around 40 minutes to run. Without turbo, it now takes, I think that should read with turbo, right?
Without.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Without turbo, it now takes about 20 minutes. With turbo, it takes about a minute.
Yeah, so this
Bananas.
This is talk about the dream update. Yes, it's totally overhauled, and developers, you get a special thrill as a developer of an app of like, finally I'm rewriting all of that crufty old code and it's nice and everything. Like, but what does this even mean for the user? Well, this is a very simple program, in concept.
I was going to say in execution, no, but in
concept, it makes a bootable clone of everything. Along what axes can this program improve? Well, it can improve in usability and aesthetics or whatever, but mainly how fast can it do the thing I want it to do? And this is not just like we made it 15% faster, like just twice as fast, just like almost all the time, 2x the speed. Even that you'd say, oh, wow, double the speed. But then this new mode where it's like, how about way more than double the speed? And I've tried this, and I asked Dave how turbo mode works, and he hasn't told me yet, but I have some ideas about how it works. Probably just, my guess is that it's keeping track of where it is in the FS events ID log, and then saying if the system has not dropped any events since then, I know exactly where I have to leave off, and so I can save myself a huge amount of work. This is something I always wanted when Apple was talking about adopting ZFS. ZFS has a way to do block level diffs between 2 volumes, so that you can have 2 volumes that are kept in sync with each other by periodic sync jobs, and the sync job doesn't iterate over files or anything like that. It knows at the block level which individual disk blocks have changed since the last time it did this. So it doesn't have to do any work to say, oh, I got to crawl this whole disk and see what has changed since the last time I did a sync. That takes such a long time. Instead, it's like, no, I know exactly where we left off. I know these 7 blocks have changed, and I don't have to do any work. I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm done. That's the dream. macOS doesn't quite have that level of stuff, but it does have a log of file system events, and SuperDuper looks like in turbo mode, if it is able to take advantage of it, at the very least, it knows which files it needs to look at, I think. Again, I don't have technical details, but I can tell you, practically speaking, having been on the beta and using the released version of it right now, I've seen a clone update of, what they call smart update of my clone drive happen in speeds that I've never seen before, like a minute, 2 minutes for literally 10 million files. It's fantastic. So yeah, like just if you don't care about, like, who cares? Someone rewrote their app, their old crufty code is gone, and maybe the UI looks nicer. What do I care? Twice as fast at minimum, and way faster sometimes.
Yep, pretty good stuff. All right, so switching over to pricing related stuff. In all the years SuperDuper has been on the market, we've never charged for updates, never even raised the price. That's 22 years of free updates, right, John?
I pushed back on this a little bit because I'm like, wasn't there that time you charged for the Apple Silicon version? And he said, yes, but you didn't have to pay for that because the Intel version continues to work on Apple Silicon. So I'll give him that on a technicality. But either way, I'm not endorsing this as a software model. This is not subscription software. This is a pay once, use it forever thing. And he's never charged for an upgrade in 22 years except for the Apple Silicon version, which you didn't even have to buy. So this is not a great business plan, but it is very nice.
No argument. All right, so continuing on, Dave writes, SuperDuper 4 is a totally new version, far more capable than before, and as such, I've decided this is going to be its first paid upgrade. I've also adjusted the price for inflation since 2004. So it's still the same bargain it was back when it was first released, but in today's dollars. SuperDuper 4 is free for qualifying recent purchases. Other SuperDuper 3 customers who purchased after July 31st of 2020 Mind you, that's 6 years ago. Receive an upgrade discount of up to 30% based on purchase date. As before, even without a license, you can make full bootable backups for free. And yes, it's really me, I work too much, provide support for both registered and unregistered users.
Yeah, Dave has been doing support just like seemingly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for just decades. I don't understand how he does it. Because as you can imagine, this program has presumably a high support burden because people are trying to do backups and it's a complicated thing and they're fraud and people are in situations, where they want their backups to work or they're trying to restore whatever. It's just, again, this is not a subscription program. This is a pay once program. So it's amazing. But I encourage you, we'll link to the blog post. I encourage you to read it. We cut out all the parts about how this thing is different, but a couple of highlights. Like the program is like split up into basically a faceless server that does the work and then like a UI that, may or may not be running to reflect what's happening with the thing, which means that it can work when you're logged out and it can work when the app isn't running. It's an entirely new, cleaner architecture that's based on an idea that Dave had in 2007, I believe. But they just didn't have time to do it then because, this will be a familiar story for people listening to ADP. It's just trying to keep up with the stuff that Apple was doing to macOS over the past 20 years or so has been so much like that they just, this design of like, we should re-architect it to be like a client-server model with a faceless thing or whatever. It's like, we don't have time for that now. We need to keep the current program so it continues to function. Otherwise, this program just becomes a dead product. Like, well, now it can't do the thing you buy it to do. It can't do it anymore because Apple made changes. That wasn't acceptable, so they had to keep it working, and they did. Heroically, but now they got the breathing room to do this, and I'm here to tell you that it is fantastic. And honestly, the beta, the only feedback I had to give on the beta was like all UI stuff. Like functionally, I haven't had any problems with it. It works better than the old version. So I know this sounds like an ad for SuperDuper, but honestly, this is one of my favorite programs ever for the Mac. I had no idea this was coming. I'm just so excited to see a brand new version of this. And if you have used the old version, I encourage you to check out the new one. It's a brand new program from top to bottom. It's amazing.
Well, congrats to Dave. Genuinely, this is a really impressive effort, and it's really great. And I hope that Dave sells 1 trillion copies.
Yeah, like when John said earlier, like you would think this would be an easy thing. Just clone this disk to this disk. Like that's kind of like saying, Dropbox was just sync this folder to all of my computers. Like that's like there's a lot of very complex problems that you can boil down to one sentence, and like that's what the user should see. Yes, that is true, but the actual implementation and details of that are a very different level of complexity than what it sounds like. And I can't even imagine the level of patience that Dave Nania must have to deal with Apple's changes over the years with this, because they have not been they have not been small. And certainly Apple has not been particularly helpful to people who want to clone disks with all of their changes. So yeah, this really is a remarkable feat to have an app like this that lasts so long and keeps up with all of those different things, all those different waves and new requirements coming all the time. And, Apple really, I don't think Apple is intentionally so, but Apple could not be more hostile towards this kind of use case with their development in the last, decade or so. But Dave has kept up. And it's a really, really good app that solves a surprisingly complex problem very well.
Yeah. At various times, Apple has probably unintentionally basically broke the functionality that SuperDuper needs to do its job, because at a certain point when they started doing like the sealed system volume and cryptographically sealed stuff, the only tools that could actually make a bootable volume were tools provided by Apple. And if Apple provided broken versions of those tools, you were screwed, because they had to be signed by Apple to do the thing. Like, the whole chain of trust of like a bootable system is starting from a known good image or whatever. Eventually, over the years, necessarily involved using tools and APIs that Apple provided, and there was no alternative. And so Apple would ship versions of those that were broken, and Dave would be like, you broke my program are you going to fix it before you release version, macOS version, whatever? And it was always just incredibly fraught. And like, they don't care about these kind of programs. Like, oh, this isn't a thing you should need or whatever. It's like, well, great, Apple, why don't you make iCloud backup for Macs like you have for phones? But they're not doing that. And that wouldn't provide bootable backups anyway. So I'm glad that this app continues to work. And it does still use Apple tools behind the scenes, which are a major source of its limitations. Like I was talking about one recently where like there's a nice feature in SuperDuper that it has to let you know about these nuances that you would rather not think about, but you have to. When you're cloning your drive, your boot drive, the system, the operating system is on a separate volume from your stuff. I mean, that's been that way for many years now. But just to remind you, it's an illusion provided you like, oh, there's my bootable hard drive. And when I open it up, I see all my stuff. Those are multiple things merged together. One of them is the bootable version of macOS. And when you do the syncing thing with it, you're like, oh, it's just like copying your data files over there. But what if you update macOS on your main boot drive? The next time, in the old days, when you did a SuperDuper clone, it would also then clone that new operating system onto your clone. But it can't do that anymore because of the sealed system volume. So it detects, hey, your main disk and your clone are now running different versions of macOS. Do you want to fix that? Whereas before, you might not think to do that and not realize when you boot it from your clone, you're using an older version of macOS, which would work fine. It would continue to work. It's just, Anyway, now it says, oh, do you want me to fix it? And if you say yes, guess what? It has to wipe the whole thing because that's the only way Apple will allow you to do it, which is fine. It just takes longer and everything. But like I asked, can you just update the macOS part? And the answer was no. They just literally can't. Apple says no. So things could definitely be improved here. But this program is going to great lengths to try to make it A, seem simple, and B, give you every possible option for achieving what you want to achieve.
Yep, it's great work. All right, let's talk Apple upgrade program. So if you recall, there was the iPhone upgrade program, which let you finance a phone and you could upgrade like every year, or you could just do it, so that you own the phone outright after every 2 years. And now that's been sunset and there's an Apple upgrade program. So Apple Upgrade offers 12 and 24-month leasing options for iPhone and Apple Watch, and 24 and 36-month leasing options for Mac and iPad. So our friend John Voorhees over at Mac Stories writes, for iPads, the starting prices range from $13 a month to $25 a month. Macs range from starting prices of $25 to $49 a month. And the Apple Watch ranges from $12 to $47 a month. But again, these are just the starting prices. You can configure a fully loaded 16-inch MacBook Pro that is just under $230 a month. And it won't include AppleCare. Back to the newsroom post. Well, when customers first enroll in Apple Upgrade, they can further lower their monthly lease payments by trading in their currently owned device through Apple Trade-In. Customers can also earn 3% daily cash back when making their lease payments with Apple Card. All applicants will be subject to a soft credit inquiry that will not impact their credit score. At the end of the lease term, customers can upgrade their device to the latest generation, purchase it with a one-time payment, or simply return it and exit the program. In the Klarna app, because guess what? Klarna is what's doing the back end of all this. They can stay on top of all their lease information, including their billing schedule and remaining payouts. Customers can add an AppleCare subscription to protect their products, making the return of their current device and upgrade to a new one even easier. With the launch of Apple Upgrade, Apple will no longer offer the iPhone Upgrade program and iPhone payments in the United States. When eligible, customers currently enrolled in the iPhone Upgrade program will have the option of leasing a new device with Apple Upgrade, financing with Apple Card monthly installments, purchasing the product outright, or choosing carrier financing. So The Verge has a table where they go through some example price breakdowns and so on and so forth.
The important part in this table is how much is left to pay, because that is really the big difference between, I know they all both start with U, the upgrade program, and what was the old one? Update?
Yes, I believe that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, this new one is a lease, which kind of like leasing a car, you make a bunch of monthly payments, and at the end of the payments, you have not paid for the thing. You don't own the thing. There is still some amount that you haven't paid yet, and you can choose to, at that point, pay whatever is left and buy it outright, or return the product and have it end the lease, or get a different product and start a new lease. And so how much is left? So that obviously you have lower monthly payments, because when you add up all your monthly payments, it adds up to less than the price of the product. So when the lease ends, how much is left? And I was interested in the numbers they had in this diagram here, looking at the buyout amount, the rightmost column, to say, because you would love to see the buyout amount and you see like how much is left on my new iPhone. $1,000 is left. That means I paid $100 over 24 months to have an iPhone. Like that would be great. Anyway, how much is left? And as you noted, these were like starting prices for the monthly thing. So I'm scrolling all the way down to the Mac thing. Mac Studio, $49 a month. Over the course of the entire lease, you end up paying about $1,700, and you have $700 left over. But that's for like a base Mac Studio that costs $2,500. What if you want the 8 terabyte SSD and 96 gigs of RAM? What is your monthly payment then, and how much is left on that? Do you end the lease with $10,000 left to buy the thing out? I'm definitely going to be looking at these numbers to see how they work out, because as lots of people noted, like there's no like interest payments or anything here. Like the main catch is that compared to the old program is that there's Apple Care is not included, so you have to add that into the price if you want to have it or whatever. But the bottom line is it's not like you don't own it at the end. You're just leasing it. It's just like a leased car, and like a leased car. If your goal is to never have a car that's more than 2 years old, like you always want to have like a 1 or 2 year old car, and you're okay with always having a car payment, you lease a car for 2 years, and then you give it back, and then you lease a new car, and then you give it back, and then you lease a new car, and you give it back, and that way you will always have a newish car in exchange for always paying a car payment. As opposed to if you just bought that one car and then paid it off over 5 years, you would have that same car for 5 years. But then the good thing is at the end of those 5 years, you own the car outright, you can continue to drive it for another 5 years, and so on and so forth. So this is the computer version of that, leasing computers, which for most people doesn't make sense because most people don't need a new computer every 2 years or every 3 years. Like, I got to have a new computer. But if you find yourself always buying a new computer every 2 or every 3 years, this program may make sense depending on how much is left that you didn't pay for during that time and how much you really, really want a new computer every 2 to 3 years. So I'm not sure how this is going to work for Apple. I know they're always innovating in the financial space of finding ways that people can give them money. But yeah, this is not a radical innovation. Car leasing has been around for a long time. I'm just wondering how many customers want this. The old program, the people who like the old one, it was like a cheaper, easier way to get a new iPhone every X years. But the good thing about that was at the end of you going through one of those set of payments, you owned the phone, and that's not the case here. So I guess take it or leave it if it's what you want. But I really want to see what the lease payments are and the buyout amount is for the Mac Studio that I'm going to configure and by the end of this year, hopefully.
God help you. Real-time follow-up. They were both the upgrade program. It's just iPhone upgrade program or Apple upgrade. No program.
Yeah, we'll get to the differences in more of the differences in a second. But yeah, definitely check out the Verge table to see what the monthly costs are and the buyout amounts are. It's actually not bad for the phones too. Like $35 a month, and at the end you have $360 left. So yeah, like if you want a new iPhone every 2 years, you don't have to pay the full cost of an iPhone for 2 years worth of iPhone usage.
Yep. So Ryan Christoffel over at 9to5Mac has a really good summary of, basically the old versus the new, if you will. So the major differences that Ryan points out are, first of all, it's leasing versus financing, as we spoke about. Apple Upgrade, generally speaking, has lower monthly payments, but that's, again, because at the end, you don't own the thing. You own a portion. Well, you don't really own anything, but you sort of kind of figuratively speaking own a portion of the thing.
You have the option to pay the rest or give it back.
Right. Third, Apple Care is optional instead of mandatory, though if you're planning on giving it back, I personally would strongly suggest opting into it. And then Apple Upgrade also is obviously not limited to the iPhone. You can do it with a Mac, an iPad, or an Apple Watch as well. Now, there was some rumblings, a week or two ago, that somebody had found some evidence of some shenanigans that Apple might pull. So there was evidence that Apple would potentially restrict the use of a phone to only a small series of apps. And there was some reporting about that by Emma Roth at The Verge, who writes, Apple says it won't limit the capabilities of devices leased through its new upgrade program if you miss a payment. In an emailed statement to The Verge, Apple spokesperson Brian Bumbury says, there will be no restricted mode and or there will be no limitations put on device functionality due to missed payments or default with the Apple Upgrade program. This confirmation comes after 9to5Mac uncovered code on an iOS 27 beta for a new, quote, app-managed features, quote, system. This would reportedly allow financial partners to perform ongoing status checks on a device, as well as have Apple System Services put a device in restricted mode if its owner isn't in good financial standing. Restricted mode would prevent users from accessing most apps on their phone, except for the basic ones like phone, the App Store, clock, settings, and wallet. I love that App Store is one of them, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think there were some other stories like, this restricted mode could be used by other things, like let's say carriers or other companies or whatever, but it's a pretty clear messaging from Apple. They're saying, though this feature may exist, we will not use it if you miss payments in the Apple Upgrade program. I guess they're not saying what anyone else will use this for, or if anyone else will use it, but it's nice to know that if you miss payments, they won't disable your phone. But if you do miss payments, they will repossess your phone. So beware of that.
This whole system kind of like, I don't love that they built this, because even though they're saying now, don't worry, we're not going to use it for this. Like, well, but somebody's going to use it for that. It's kind of a weird, gross system. I do not like that they built this.
Well, like I said, I mean, in the end, they will send you to collections if you stop if you stop paying the payments on your lease, just like they will with a car. And that, in general, will not end well with you. But these systems are worse in that, like, getting sent to collections and going through all that at least takes some amount of time, and there's some recovery from it. Whereas an electronic off switch, like a kill switch for your device, would be immediate and much more severe. And it's good that Apple's saying that they will not do this in no uncertain terms.
Yeah, but like imagine what a government could compel Apple to do, for instance. Like there's all sorts of ways this can go very badly. I don't like this at all.
Well, I mean, MDM already does all this stuff, so it's not like this functionality is not already in iOS.
Yeah, but the user can choose whether to enroll in MDM or not.
Yeah, the user can choose whether or not to enroll in this program. Like, that's what it comes down to. Although it's not clear whether this functionality is only for Apple upgrade phones or it's available on all phones. Like, I mean, MDM is built into every phone, but if you're not enrolled in an MDM program for your workplace, it doesn't affect you. So that's a question that Apple has not answered, is like, this functionality in this unreleased OS, is it like MDM where you have to like opt into it and you're getting into it, or is it just on everybody's phone and we just don't know it and it's sleeping there? That I don't know the answer to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Joe Rosignol at Mac Rumors answers the question, is it worth it? Joe writes, we'll use the iPhone 17 Pro with 256 gigs of storage on a 1-year lease as an example. In the US, the device costs $1,100 up front, but through Apple Upgrade, you can lease it for $46 a month for a year. For a year-long lease, your payments would total $551.88, which is lower than the $1,100 that you would have spent up front. $552 is approximately half of the iPhone 17 Pro's price, so Apple is essentially betting that the device will retain more than 50% of its value after 1 year in order to ensure that the Apple Upgrade program is profitable. If you simply want to spend the least amount of money on iPhones over time, buying them up front and reselling them privately is very likely the best option. I didn't take a poll quote out, but Joe makes a very right point, broadly speaking, that while that is the best option financially speaking, that is also way more involved and way more complicated than just handing the phone back to Apple and walking away and with a new one, or just returning it.
Yeah, and this is emphasizing the point of like, why would they do this? How do they make money? They make money because when you give back the phone, you're giving back something that is more valuable to Apple than the amount that you paid for it. It's like they say, if you paid half the price of the phone and you give it back after a year, if that phone hasn't dropped in value by at least half, Apple now can make a profit on it because they can sell it refurbished, or they can do, that's the whole idea with this, is they don't make money on, like, there's no interest payments. They're not hoping that you'll default on your payments and they'll collect interest. That's not how the system works. The system works is that they end up with more than they gave you. You get the phone for a year for a certain amount of money, and then Apple gets the phone back, and that phone is more valuable to them than the amount of money that you haven't paid off that much of the money. So I'm assuming this program will work out for them because, again, car leases work on the same principle, although I think they probably have interest payments. But anyway, I'm sure this will all work out financially for Apple. It's just a question I have of, among potential iPhone buyers, how many people find this type of system attractive? I think it is understandable, and it is, something people are familiar with, but is it something that people look at and say, yes, that's how I want to pay for my phone? And I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe it will attract a new set of customers to iPhones who previously didn't want to pay the big upfront costs, but I think everybody kind of understands leases as again, like with leasing cars, it's not a bargain way to get into a car. It's a way for people who always want to have a nice new car to always have a nice new car with less hassle and basically less money, because you could pay less money overall, but eventually you would have an older than 2-year-old car, right? Eventually you have a 5-year-old car. And if you just can't stand having a 5-year-old car, leases are for you, right? But are those customers the type of ones who, I can't stand having a 5-year-old car, but I wasn't going to buy an iPhone because it's too expensive? I don't know if there's a market fit here, but I guess we'll find out.
Well, I think I think the world has shown that there is very much market for something like this. So first of all, I lease cars. I've leased cars for a while. I haven't leased all of my cars, but I've leased many of them. And the main reason I like a lease is that it is predictable. There is no spike in cost anywhere along the way, and there is no surprise in cost or trade in value or resale value down the road. Everything with the lease is preset. So when you sign up for a lease for a car, and the iPhone is going to work the same way, when you sign up for a lease, you know what you're going to pay up front, you know what you're going to pay every month, and you know at the end what's going to happen, and you know when that's going to be. And I've bought used cars, I've bought new cars, and I've leased. And the lease is really nice because of how predictable that all is. It's way better for cash flow if you don't have to like suddenly lay out $30,000 it's like all at once or something. That can make things a lot easier on people. It can make things affordable that otherwise wouldn't be affordable or would be more difficult to be affordable. And in a low interest rate environment, that can be very beneficial for the buyer. And oftentimes car manufacturers will offer lease incentives where they are kind of eating some of the long-term interest to juice their sales today. And oftentimes lease specials or lease incentives from the manufacturers are oftentimes some of the best deals in new cars. If you happen to want what they happen to need to get rid of. So it can be quite nice. In this case, when you bring it down to like phone level, I see why people would do this, because it does similar things. It levels out the capex from this giant outlay of money up front to just pay it every month. And in fact, if you look around the cell phone industry, many people have been buying phones through monthly payments for a long time. All the carriers have things like this, and many people buy phones this way to help absorb the cost of phones. In those cases, though, they usually own the phones at the end. In this case, they don't, but also the trade-off here is that, well, it's also cheaper. And when you sign up for a lease, like what you are gaining, as I mentioned, you're gaining predictability and kind of a level cost over time. What you are losing is flexibility. So, and this, again, same thing with a car. Like with a car, if you know that you're going to want this exact car for at least 3 years, and you're going to put in no more than this number of miles per year on this car, then this is a good fit. I will have exactly this car for exactly this time. I won't have to think about my car. I won't have to think about service or anything like that because it's all going to be included. I'm not going to have to worry about if I'm going to need some kind of big expensive repair. You can just kind of not think about it, and that's it. This will do that for Apple products. There is a market for that. It is not everybody. Like flexibility is key. Timeline flexibility, usage flexibility. In this case, I don't have any kind of usage limits, but there certainly are time flexibility trade-offs. So if you want to buy a phone, or maybe a phone is a bad example, but if you want to buy a MacBook Pro, and you want to always have the newest MacBook Pro, first of all, I don't even do that. That's kind of ridiculous. But if suppose you wanted to do that, a lease ties you to a timeline. So if you buy one now and you say, all right, I'll get a 2-year lease or a 3-year lease, and then in 3 years or whatever, I'll upgrade to the M7 or 8 or whatever. You don't actually know when that's coming out, and so it might come out and you still have 6 more months on your lease, or it might come out and your lease ended 6 months ago and you had to figure out something else to do. So it does introduce limitations and trade-offs like that, but for many people, they just don't care. And they just want to know that I'm going to buy a phone, I'm going to maybe give it a 3-year lease, and then at the end of 3 years, I'm going to bring it to Apple, and I don't have to worry about trade-in prices. I don't have to worry about resale sites. I just bring it into Apple, and I swap it for a new one. That's pretty appealing, especially if the price is right, which in this case, I think Apple's doing everything they can to make the price right, because there is no interest. Now, they're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. Neither is their partner Klarna. Like Klarna is a big buy now pay later company. Those companies make money in various ways. It seems like, you're giving an interest-free loan for X months or years. Yes, but a lot of people will be a little bit late on a payment and incur huge fees. So it's not out of the goodness of their hearts. Like they do make money off people being imperfect. They also will find ways, with buy now, pay later, they'll usually find ways to charge the retailers more or something like that. In the case with Apple and Klarna, I don't know how that's worked out between the two of them for this deal, but rest assured, they're going to make money. Like Klarna's going to make money, Apple's going to make money, but Apple's going to also just make money on the sale of the device, however it happens. So even if Apple gives a couple of percent to Klarna for their service part of this, and then Apple's hands are clean and they're out of it, they made their money on the device sale, so that's fine. So it makes sense for them. And again, I think it makes sense for a lot of people. I even would consider it for like things like laptops, where like I'm not buying a new laptop that often. You know, I'm getting usually about 3 years out of them these days. So, you know, maybe it would make sense for that. But the other thing is businesses. This is huge. Now, Apple has done business leasing for a lot of their products for a while. You have to, you know, go through the business reps. Off the top of my head, I've never done it, so I don't know what products it covers. I think it has covered Macs at least, and I think even iPhones if you were like a big enough business. But businesses love leasing because it makes things more predictable. And again, a business does not want to deal with trading in 19 phones every couple years. Like they want to just have this be taken care of. That's why business leasing is such an attractive option. Well, there's a lot of small businesses too that would have that same need that were just never big enough to, you know, to have Apple's business rep program and everything like that. And when you think about like, there's also just families where that's true for like, if you have a couple with a few kids, you might have 4 or 5 devices that you replace every few years. Do you want to deal with sending 4 or 5 box kits in to trade them in to see like, oh, I sent it in a week later and they changed the price and now it's worth less money? Or, you know, leasing saves a lot of hassle. For a lot of people, it's not worth it. For a lot of people, it is. So I think it's really good to have this option. It seems like they're doing it in what looks like a pretty straightforward way. And you always have the option to buy it at the end. So that kind of takes care of a lot of, you know, risks there. Again, I think what you're mainly giving up is timing flexibility. You have to know, okay, I'm really going to keep this for 2 years or 3 years or whatever. Other than that, it seems like a pretty good option, as long as they don't pull any of this remote disabling crap.
You mentioned something dealing with car leases, and I haven't ever done one, but I'm vaguely aware that there are usually clauses in a car lease about maximum mileage they expect you to put on it, and if you go over it, maybe there's some penalties. And also often there's stuff about like cosmetics and wear and tear, like you can't just like cut up all the seats and spill milk inside it or whatever. Like I'm sure, you know, automobile leases have stuff like that in them, because if they didn't, you know, they'd probably lose money, especially based on how people treat their cars. But you mentioned like you probably think there's not a usage limit on the phones, but it makes me wonder if there is something in there about the condition of the phone that you turn back in, and not just like, oh, it can't have a shattered screen or whatever, but I'm thinking like, you know, the way people drive rental cars. Hey, this is just a leased phone. I'm going to charge it to 100% all the time. I'm going to leave it in the hot sun. I'm going to do everything through MagSafe. Like I'm going to abuse this battery. So by the time I give it back, it's going to be like redlining on like, you know, maximum battery capacity 52% after 2 years of use.
I'm going to fast charge it every day to 100.
Right. Is there something in the lease about that? Or is that like, hey, the lease didn't say anything about the condition of the battery. I just used it like an iPhone that, you know, it's not cracked. It's not broken. It's fully functional. I just used it. I used Apple chargers. Like, you know, I do wonder about the fine print and the leases there, and if they're going to get burned on that. Because if it's your phone and you're trying to like, oh, I paid so much for this phone, you're inclined to like at least think about maybe I should baby the battery a little bit. But if you know this phone is going back in 2 years, you're just going to, you know, just ride it hard, man. Like, and send. This occurs to me now because I'd mentioned that with my 16 Pro, I set an 80% battery limit when I bought the phone 2 years ago ish. And I recently, I'm like, look, I'm in the home stretch now. And actually at 80% battery limit, a couple of days I felt like the battery was getting a little bit low. So I cranked it up to 90%. And then recently when I went on vacation, I pushed it up to 100. I'm just going to leave it on 100 because I'm getting a new phone in September anyway. Right. So I'm just even me, like at the end of this phone's life, you get 100% battery. And I mean, it's great. The battery's doing great. You know, the 80% thing I fully endorsed if you could possibly do it. But that's because, I mean, this device my phone is going to the Pokemon mines, obviously. It's not going to be resold. It's going to my wife, who will add it to her fleet, and she will bump down one of her phones. We have a strange system going on here. But when it is your phone, or when it's going to be passed on to play Pokemon Go for somebody, like, you do care about the battery. But if this was going back to Apple, I would have had it 100% from day one because I wouldn't have cared. So that's something to watch for as this program rolls out, and if it does get adopted, to see if we start seeing stories about like, I returned my perfectly pristine phone, but the battery was a little bit wonky, and Apple wouldn't give me Apple made me pay something for it or whatever.
Well, in one of the pieces of documentation I read, and I don't think I can put my hands on it right this second, but they said kind of in a wink, wink, nudge, nudge way that, hey, you're probably going to want to get AppleCare because that'll make, didn't I read that earlier? That it'll make turn-in way easier. I forget what I read that actually said that.
It's just like a leased car and having car insurance. If you get a leased car and you crash it, you have to have car insurance on a car in most states anyway, but that's AppleCare is the car insurance of your phone.
Right. And if you get a leased car and something damages it more than their allowable damage. So leased cars, usually they will allow some degree of minor wear and tear. Like if you get a little scratch in the clear coat, it's fine. They have, if a pebble hits it, they have thresholds. Like,
easy,
okay, well, if it's
easy,
I know, well, not that kind of pebble.
Not that kind of pebble.
Yeah. But but they'll have thresholds. Like, a scratch can be shorter than a couple of inches, or a dent can be, shallower than this and smaller than this. Or they'll have a dollar amount. Like it has to have less than $1,500 worth of minor scrapes and scuffs. And if you go over that, they'll charge you fees. Or what you're supposed to do is if your leased car gets that much damage, you're supposed to actually go through insurance and go to a body shop and have it fixed before you turn it in. And that's what this is the equivalent of with AppleCare on the leased phones. It's like the lease is not going to cover if you shatter the screen. So if you have AppleCare, they maybe they will just do it for you when you turn it in if the Apple Store is involved, or maybe they'll make you do an AppleCare repair first and then turn it in. But whatever it is, that's all under one roof.
Yeah, I don't know if they would combine it, but for sure what they want back is a phone in pristine working condition, plus or minus whatever allowable nicks and scratches are. So if you do have AppleCare and you come with a cracked screen, they're going to be like, oh yeah, use your AppleCare to fix that screen and then we'll take it. And maybe they'll do that in a single transaction, but the point is it's not going to save you. Whatever it would cost you to get your screen fixed with AppleCare, it will still cost you that same amount to get your screen fixed with AppleCare, just like it would cost you the same amount to go through your insurance to the body shop.
Yeah, I can tell you when we leased the Volvo, one of the things they offered, they offered several add-ons because of course they did. But one of the things that we actually did do was, because we didn't know and we still don't know actually, and we'll talk about this later probably, but we don't know if we're going to keep the car, turn in the car, whatever. One of the things they offered was, for not a terrible amount of money, some program, I don't remember the name of it, that basically said, hey, if you've curbed the snot out of your wheels, which coincidentally I curbed Erin's wheels, she didn't do it, I did it, but anyway, or one of the wheels. But anyways, if you curb the snot out of one of the wheels, we'll forgive you. You pay us something like $1,000 up front or whatever the case may be. And if you curb a wheel, it's fine. There are a few other things that are part of that. So generally speaking, if we were to turn in the car with one of the wheels the way it is, then we would have to pay presumably to replace the whole wheel, or at the very least, not resurface it, repair it. But because we did check the box on this whatever program, that will be forgiven, and it's not the end of the earth. And it's like Marco was saying, there's a small amount of wear and tear that they consider completely reasonable. But anything more than that, there's going to be some sort of penalty or something like that at the end of our lease. And this is our first lease, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But there'll be some sort of figuring out time where we need to figure out with Volvo, okay, what do we need to fund or pay for, and what are they just going to eat?
And that flies in the face of the way people use phones, which is the expectation that you get a phone and then you use it until it literally disintegrates in your hands. We've all seen the people out there with phones how is that still running? And that's something people do because they don't, it still works and they don't want to buy a new phone and it's expensive. But if you're on this lease, that's not an option for you. You can do that as long as you want, but when the time comes and the lease ends, you can't turn that thing back in with a shattered screen and a huge nick off the bottom and the thing separating. Apple will not take that back. So you need to have AppleCare and have AppleCare repair it, probably at pretty large expense, because AppleCare doesn't make all your repairs free. And the worse it is, the more it costs. Or you have to pay the remaining balance on that phone that is destroyed. And so it's just like you had bought it up front, only in smaller pieces at 0% interest, which may still be attractive to people, but that's the one place where the lump sum gets you. Yes, it's even steady payments, but when the even steady payments are over, you've been paying 20 something bucks a month. Now it's $300 lump sum, please. Or pay to have the phone repaired. And with AppleCare, it may be around $300 to get it repaired when it's that condition, because people just use their phones for way longer than you would think they would, because if it still functions and is not actively slicing skin off their fingers as they use the touchscreen, they'll just keep using it.
You are describing my youngest brother 100%. The phones that I've seen him, and he refuses to use a case despite having an even worse history than I with his phones. But they can be shattered to smithereens, and as long as they still function and do not, to your point, actively cut him, he's going to still use them.
They put the screen protector. My sister has a screen protector on her phone because it covers up the gigantic crack going from one corner of the screen to the other. So now you can't feel the crack anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it.
So do either of you plan to lease anything as you know it today?
I mean, I'm going to look at the Mac, the lease prices for the Mac. I'm definitely going to look at it. I'm not sure that I'm going to do it because, as you've seen, I'm not the type of person who gets a new Mac every 2 years. Yeah. But I'll look at it, especially because we're in this weird, I wouldn't consider it at all if we weren't currently in this very weird time where everything is super expensive. And, so I will look at it. I don't think it's attractive to me for phones because, again, I use them for 2 years and they go to the Pokemon mines and it's a system that works well for me.
Yeah, for me, I don't particularly care for having leased. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, Marco. And you can make a very strong argument that, hey, instead of paying, $1,000 for a phone, you can pay $50 for the first month and invest most of the rest of that $1,000, and have that $900 or $950, whatever, work for you rather than just handing it to Apple. And intellectually, I 100% understand that. But I really don't like owing people money. So for me,
well, you shouldn't have a house then.
Yeah, tell me about it. For me, I don't think that there's any chance I would do this for an iPhone or a watch or an iPad. But I had told myself prior to Ramageddon that this was probably going to be the year that I would upgrade my Mac. I love my Mac. I have an M3 Max MacBook Pro. But the M3 Max MacBook Pro that I do not want to go backwards from has 64 gigs of RAM, which is bad. But as I've mentioned many times on the show, it has an 8 terabyte SSD, which means this is like a $90,000 computer now. And because of that, if I choose to upgrade this year, there is a very good chance that I would lease rather than buy, because I'm going to look at the sticker price for whatever it is that I'd be potentially buying and vomit all over myself. So I don't know. That's kind of where I sit today. Ask me again in 10 minutes. I'll change my mind. What about you, Marco?
I also don't like owing people money. I don't think I would do it for something like an iPhone because I think the timeline is pretty short on that. Because I buy a new iPhone almost every year. I have bought one every year. And so I don't know if I'm going to do that forever, but I am currently doing that. And so, to split it across 12 payments and then have to deal with it at the end, like maybe that might be worth it. It's not quite as much of a slam dunk for me. But when I look at something like my main Mac, like you were just saying, this is like, I think when I bought this Mac, it was something like $6,000 or $7,000.
Yeah, I think mine, again, M3 Max was roughly $5,000, give or take a little bit. I don't remember exactly, but with similar, order of magnitude.
Yeah, like mine's also an M3 Max. It's now, 3 years old now.
Wait, your desktop laptop is also an M3 Max? I'm sure I knew that, but I'd forgotten.
Yeah, my laptop is a regular M4. No Pro, no Max, just a regular M4. Mm-hmm. But my desktop laptop is an M3 Max. The first one was an M1 Max. I got an M3 Max. And I'm probably going to get the whatever they do with the M6 line that is rumored, or the M7, whatever like the next big boom is, I'm probably going to jump to that, but we'll see, pricing and performance and everything like that. But when I do replace that, like you said, like it's spec'd up. It's probably going to be like $8,000 or $9,000. It's probably going to be a big purchase, and I'm going to use it for more than the lease term probably. Like if I do say a 2-year lease, that gives me a 2-year interest-free loan on a $8,000 purchase. That's interesting, especially since I know I will use it for that time. And then at the end of it, I would probably just buy it out, right? And because it's either way, like it's the same amount of money at the end. I just get an interest-free loan for half of it for most of that time. That is compelling, especially like, if the business pays for it. Again, that kind of helps. It helps, cash flow in the business be like this month-to-month cost. So that honestly, like for something like a Mac or like a monitor where like it's going to be a lot of money, but I expect to use it for longer than the lease term and just buy it out at the end, that actually makes a lot of sense financially, as long as you don't mind the debt angle of it. But if there's no fees and no interest, it's kind of a rational move.
Yeah, I concur. All right, in macOS 26.4, there are battery charge limits for the Mac, and you can use this in shortcuts, I guess. So reading from 9to5Mac, in the first beta of macOS 26.4, Mac users can now specify a charge limit between 80 and 100%. The charge limit feature was previously only available on iPhone and iPad. Additionally, the new iOS 26.4 and macOS 26.4 betas bring charge limit to the Shortcuts app. Now you can automate setting your charge limit. That is pretty neat.
Here we are on 26.6. It just came out. So this thing has been in the notes for a long time, but I wanted to keep it here because I am a huge fan of charge limit. I just talked about it on my phone, preserving my phone battery, but especially if you have a desktop laptop. Do you have a laptop that spends most of its time on your desk plugged into power? You need to use this feature, because it will so extend the life of your laptop's battery instead of having, and I know they have the optimized charging where like it'll try to do something smart, but like just take the slider and slam it to 80%. Because first of all, the batteries are so good now that even 80% of these laptops is plenty. And second of all, you know what you're doing with your laptop. If it really is on your desk plugged into power almost all the time, there's no reason to keep it at 100%. I wish you could even go lower, like 40%, which is I think one of the supposedly more on the optimal limit. But anyway, use this feature on your Mac. Turn it down to 80% if it spends most of its time plugged in. Your battery will thank you. Resale value will thank you. Even if you're selling to a private person, because they might want to know the battery health if they're technically savvy. Again, this was 2-point versions of macOS ago. And yeah, you can automate it with shortcuts. You can have, I'm sure you could write some shortcut that's like, when I'm not in my house, change the limit to 100 or what. Like, I'm sure you could do all sorts of fancy automations, but even just control this manually like I do on my phone. I mean, it can bite you if you forget, I forgot I'm going to be traveling today and I should have put it 100%, but it doesn't take too much to remember that. And again, if you're clever with shortcuts, you can automate it in interesting ways, but it will just do so much for the life of your battery for when you do travel that every Mac user uses this. And I almost kind of wish that they would default it to 80%. Or at least put it down to 80% when it sees, hey, you've had this laptop for a month and it's always been plugged into the charger. I'm just gonna turn that down to 80% for you. Is that okay? Yes, no, right? Throw that dialogue up. But anyway, use this feature. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely am in a situation where I almost always see my battery at 80 or below because of the optimized battery charging thing. So I'm right there with you. For a desktop laptop, that is the perfect way or reason to do this. So, yep, completely agree.
And also, there's been tons of third-party utilities that have done this for years. This is an example of something like you just assume that Apple will eventually build it into macOS, and they have, and it is much more limited than the third-party options, but it's great that it's built in.
We are sponsored this episode by Zocdoc. I don't like making doctor's appointments. I don't know anybody who likes making doctor's appointments. I've often put them off for weeks or months or even longer because I just don't want to go through the process. And then sometimes when you finally do make yourself go through all that, you finally call up and you find out the next appointment is like months away and you got to wait even longer. Zocdoc is made to help solve this problem. Zocdoc lets you search and compare local in-network doctors. They have more than 150,000 providers within 200 doctor specialty types across all 50 U.S. states. And their website has tons of reviews from real patients and detailed profiles of the doctors so that you can choose the right doctor for you. When you're there, you can see actual appointment openings. You click instantly to book a visit. And that's it. It's done. And these appointments usually are available quickly within 24 to 72 hours. Sometimes you can even score same-day appointments. That is so much better than any service I've ever used to try to book doctor's appointments. So Zocdoc is also free to use. You cannot beat that. And ultimately, when it's easier to book doctors, you'll do it more, and that'll be better for you. Your health matters, and taking care of yourself shouldn't be complicated. Find and book the right doctor with Zocdoc. Head to ZocDoc.com/ATP to get started and check that appointment off your to-do list. That's Zocdoc, spelled ZocDoc.com/ATP. ZocDoc.com/ATP. Thank you so much to Zocdoc for sponsoring our show.
All right, let's do some Ask ATP, and we have a twofer from friend of the show, Todd Vaziri, the first of which reads, perhaps it's a good time to revisit backup strategies. Given our talk about SuperDuper, I couldn't agree more. What are some good strategies for different situations? Like, I'm going to read them all, and then I'll ask you, particularly John, to go through your thoughts. So the three situations Todd provides are casual computer folks, 1 to 2 computers, like your proverbial parents, advanced users, 3 or more computers in a single household, or mega advanced users, Siracusa level, NAS folks, etc. So, Marco, feel free to pop in whenever you want. But John, what do you recommend for casual computer folks specifically? And then we'll go to the others later.
So with casual people, which to be clear is most people in this parlance, people who aren't listening to ATP, the main struggle there is having any kind of backup at all. Like that is, I continue to believe that most people do not have backups, including people, by the way, on their phones. I mean, this doesn't, I'm thinking that this is in the Mac context, but it doesn't say that in the question. But like phones, we all know, like, oh, backing up your phone is just a matter of hitting that little iCloud backup thing, but it's not, because you have to pay for iCloud storage that can fit your backup and blah, blah, blah. And the plain fact is people just don't do it because they don't want to pay for iCloud storage and whatever. Even if they do pay for iCloud, they don't hit the toggle switch because they just don't think about it. And with desktop computers or laptops or whatever, it's even worse. The entire concept of backups is entirely foreign. Time Machine is the greatest advance ever made to casual computer use backups, and still it only moved the needle a little bit, I'm sure. So the main strategy I recommend for casual users of technology is to get them to use literally any kind of backup. Now, ideally, as a tech nerd friend who's helping them out or whatever, you'd be like, okay, on the Mac, you should use Time Machine. On your phone, you should use iCloud backup. Like whatever the default, simplest, cheapest option is that doesn't involve third parties, that you're sure is going to be supported, that's not going to be a hassle or whatever. And even that, it's going to be a struggle. Because you know what it's like with the Macs. They're going to be like, well, Time Machine backup. Well, how do I do that? Well, you need another hard drive. What do I do? It's the end of the world. I got to pay a monthly fee for something in some cloud? What? It's going to be hard. But that's my casual advice. And that's not a great backup, but it's better than nothing. So the choices are nothing or something in a fight. And something in a fight is what you have to do. That's the casual computer user solution I recommend. Anyone have any better brilliant ideas? Because that's kind of my defeatist position right now.
No, I think I'm with you.
Yeah.
So for advanced and mega advanced, I think they're similar. It's just a question of when you stop wanting to spend money or care. And what I recommend is, and even I have my limits there because I stop having money and care sooner than if I had unlimited funds. I would do different, better backup things. But you'd basically just go through the whole thing that we talk about. It hasn't changed for me in terms of the bullet points that you're going to hit and the order that you're going to hit them, but the specific technologies have changed a little bit. So for phone backups and iPad backups, there's honestly not a lot of options. Pay for iCloud storage enough to back up all your devices. Turn iCloud backups on. That's it. I wish it was that simple on other devices. It's that simple mostly because Apple is not particularly friendly to third-party backup services for phones, despite the EU's advice there. But, that's the answer to the devices that support that. On the Mac, you just go down the list. Number 1, Time Machine. That means, yes, you have to get a hard drive, local Time Machine, a hard drive connected to your local thing. It's the simplest version of Time Machine. It's the most reliable version of Time Machine. It does mean you have to have an external drive. What external drive do I buy? If I have a laptop, how do I keep it undetected? I got to mount it and unmounted, and now it says it was unmounted and improperly and blah, blah. Yep, that's what you're signing up for. That's Time Machine, but that's got to be your step 1, local Time Machine backup. I would say number 2 is cloud backup. Get some data that's not in your house, so when your house burns down, you have some kind of backup. Past sponsor Backblaze is still my go-to recommendation. I recently learned from somebody, maybe my brother, that Crash Plan somehow still exists. I thought they had gone out of business, but maybe
No, I thought they were enterprise only or something, or if not, went out of business.
I thought maybe someone bought them. Anyway,
they're very bad, very, very bad.
Yeah, I don't know what state they're in now, but anyway.
Although you know what's worse? Carbonite. Oh man, I had to deal with that once for somebody I was doing a favor for. Oh man. Mm-hmm. That was real bad.
Yeah, I mean, again, like we talked about some of the stories of Backblaze, like not blocking up cloud drives or whatever, but like I still feel like they are the best in the industry.
Night and day.
Again, they sponsored us a long time ago, but I used them before they sponsored, and I continue to use them after they sponsored us. They're not perfect, but I believe they are the best for the Mac. But if you have other solutions that you like Arc Backup or any kind of tech nerdy, if you want to go super tech nerdy, all I'm saying is that step one is local time machine. Step two is offsite backup, by which I mean cloud backup. All right. Step three, then you go into network time machine backup, because sometimes doing a local time machine backup, especially if it involves a laptop that's on the move a lot, oh, I forgot to plug in the drive, I didn't plug into my docking station, whatever. You have all sorts of excuses why you didn't do your local time machine backup. But if you have network time machine backup, then every time you're on your network, that can happen. And yes, you can have multiple time machine backup destinations on a Mac. I know a lot of people don't think about this, but it's been my mode that I've operated in all the time. Time machine can back up to more than one place, and it will back up to all of them whenever they're available. So if the local drive isn't attached, it will do to the network one. If they're both attached, it will do them each in turn. You could have as many backup destinations as you want. So yeah, local time machine, cloud backup, network time machine. Now we start getting into the more exotic stuff, which is like, okay, bootable clone, SuperDuper, carbon copy cloner. You could swap that maybe with network time machine, depending, but a clone is not a backup. A clone is get you back up and running as fast as possible, but if you deleted a file a week ago, your clone that you made last night is not going to save you. So a clone is not a backup. A clone is, my hard drive just blew up, I need to get back to work ASAP. A time machine restoration is going to take literally 8 hours. Reboot from your carbon copy cloner backup. So you can swap that priority depending on what your needs are. But yeah, a clone backup. Then you start getting to the more exotic stuff, which is like, I'm going to have my own bespoke backup system involving rsync just for my particular files, targeted at my NAS and also pushing them up to S3. Like I don't go that hardcore. I would love to, but I don't have the money or time to push that. And I'll have some news on my backup struggles related to bespoke solutions that push my files up to various storage systems coming in probably a couple of months, because I'm still working some things out here. But anyway, I don't go that hard on this because ominous. It just eventually starts to cost real money. Because like one of the beautiful things about Backblaze is they will back up everything that's directly attached to your Mac, and you can game it with iSCSI and stuff like that, but they'll do it for a flat fee, which is incredibly good compared to when you have to pay per byte. And no matter how you price stuff out, Backblaze ends up being cheaper pretty quickly if you have a lot of data. And beyond that, then you get into like not using a Mac anymore and instead using some kind of like, Linux computer runner ZFS with real-time, multiple redundant block clones happening in real time, and block this being sprayed all over the internet and stuff. Again, I don't do that either because I don't use Linux, and that's outside the realm of Apple stuff. So that's what I recommend for people. And during that list of things, there will come a point where you're like, this is too much. It's too annoying. It's too expensive. Do I have to buy a NAS now? Do I have to pay for this? Do I have to pay for that? So stop when you can't bear it anymore. There are things I left out, like, I'm going to periodically clone my hard drive and drive my hard drive over to my friend's house. You feel free to mix that in, but in my experience, it's just too much of a hassle and people forget to do it. Same thing with like, I'm going to burn my photo library to M disks that'll last for 100 years. How often are you going to do that? I mean, it's better than nothing, and you should do that. If that's like, this is like the long tail of like things I might remember to do when I'm enthusiastic about it, but then forget about for a few years. Almost guaranteed that if some disaster happens, you'll think back, I haven't brought my hard drive over to my parents' house in 6 months because I just forgot about it. It's not going to happen the day after you bring it over there. So yeah, that's my backup advice. It hasn't really changed much. Like I said, the only thing that's changed is the specific technologies and companies involved, but the main strategy is the same. You want to have your data in more than one place and more than one medium and more than one company. You're diversifying. So Backblaze is different than Time Machine, is different than iCloud, is different than network time machine to a Synology, is different than the whole 9 yards. Is different than a SuperDuper clone, is different than a carbon copy clone that you bring to your friend's house.
One addition, I don't disagree with anything you said. One addition, you had said, bringing a hard drive over to your parents, whatever. Just a thought. What I have done for the small bits of data, which are, it's a lot of data, but only a couple of contexts, and photos is the number one example. So for like my photos, for example, I have a hard drive at my parents'. I think it's a spinning hard drive, if I'm not mistaken. And what I do is whenever I'm there for more than like 20 minutes, which is almost every time I go, I bring my laptop more often than not, and I'll hook it up to this hard drive. And thanks to the beauty of past and future sponsor Tailscale, I can do an rsync between this hard drive and the Synology in my house. And since it's symmetric gigabit at both houses, it's reasonably quick. And so every time I'm at their house, I have this offsite backup that never leaves their house of the thing that is most valuable to me in the entire world, which is my photos. Now, I have my photos strewn across like literally 6 other places. So this is the reserve parachute, so to speak, but it's actually not particularly burdensome. And if in my case, I tend to see my parents about once a month. And so it's a nice, at least monthly backup of my photos. Again, I don't disagree with anything you said. And I do have to remember, and I do have to bring a laptop and so on and so forth. But it actually works out really nicely and is not particularly burdensome, especially thanks to the beauty of Tailscale.
You should automate that though, because you're doing a manual. Like this is definitely the mega advanced thing of like have a NAS at someone else's house and make sure they have gigabit and set up a VPN between your houses. And yeah, like definitely in the mega advanced, like,
yes,
again, tailing off. But I would just say for the thing that you're doing, it just seems like everything you've described could be automated. You don't need to be physically there to make this happen. You could set up a little thing in their house that just does this periodically, especially if you're doing some kind of like version to rsync type of thing. I mean, anyway, everyone has the limit of where they stop, but just the fact that every time you go over there, you're sitting your laptop and run a command and hit return, like that could be happening without you being there.
That is true. But what I didn't mention is I have also deployed a Synology there that gets nightly backups of everything as well.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, if you happen to have a relative with gigabit fiber who will let you install a NAS in their house, all sorts of new options can be, become open to you. But still, it's the type of thing of like, you just said, like, where your photos are strewn all over the place. Like, it's one of the reasons I'm wanting to get an 8 terabyte hard drive on my next Mac. It's just having stuff in separate places is just more things to keep track of. If you can, keep all your eggs in one basket and really watch that basket, but this is the version, keep all your eggs in one basket and back up that basket to 17 different places. It's so much easier to keep track of like my stuff is this 8 terabytes. And yes, I could have it on 3 different volumes and some of it is only on the NAS and some of it is only on my Mac and some of it is only on the external hard drive. But it becomes difficult to assure yourself that you have backed up all of that and not just, I'm backing up my Mac to 3 places, but where's your NAS backed up to? Well, is anything only on your NAS? Which things are only on your NAS? And you back up your NAS to some other thing like B2 or something, but how much of that stuff is there? And it's so much easier when you can reduce it to a smaller number of buckets. And by all means, like you said, spray those buckets everywhere in various things. I also have like my photos being backed up to Google Photos, although Google was fighting me on that because Google Drives are going to stop doing that. So I'm battling that. But like, if you pay for cloud storage like we do, I have Google One, I have the big plan in iCloud. If you pay, I think I have OneDrive as part of like Microsoft 365. If they're giving you this cloud storage and it's enough to store some stuff, it's tempting to just put a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's really easy to lose track of that. And if you just think about like, what would I do if I needed to restore from my computer now? Your mind will immediately go to the things that are simpler. SuperDuper. If it's not a backup scenario, I just want to get up and running. I understand how that works conceptually. It's simple to use. I just reboot. It goes into it. I'm fine. And the expense is now you have to have an SSD that's the same size as your boot drive to be your clone drive that you just sits there with you not using it. You're like, I'm going to spend so much money for another 8 terabyte SSD, and its sole purpose is to sit there waiting for disaster, and I'm never going to use it. Yes, that's what a backup is. And it's painful for people. They don't want to do it, right? And Time Machine, like I know how Time Machine works. I'll do that. That's the other thing people think of, because when you boot your Mac in recovery, it says, hey, do you want to restore from a Time Machine backup? You're like, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And then, wait 8 hours and it will hopefully eventually work, fingers crossed, which is why it's good to have 2 Time Machine backups, because if one of them is host, maybe the other one is good. Backups are way more complicated than they should be on the Mac. Backups on the phone are simpler. But if anything goes wrong, sorry, couldn't restore from that backup. Or for some reason your backup is 3 days ago instead of 2 days ago, you have very few options. So pick your poison.
Indeed. And then to wrap up Ask ATP for today, Todd Vaziri also wrote, can you explain what a Docker container is? I feel like I could take a stab at this, but I think, John, you are far more qualified to explain this. So could you take a stab, please?
Well, I'm going to link to the Wizard Zines site again. There is a Wizard Zine, which is like a comic book style sort of capsule summary of technology written for nerds, but that doesn't go super deep on things, but also isn't super shallow. It's like an interesting mix. Anyway, check that one out, buy it, and it will give you a good overview. I remember seeing a presentation from people, the Docker company, whatever they were, a startup or whatever, talking about Docker, I don't know, many, many, many years ago when no one had heard of it, and they were going around to companies saying, hey, we have this idea for this technology, you should check it out. And I think the comic going around then, it might have been XKCD, it might have been from the company, I don't know. I think it was shown in the presentation was the developer problem, especially for server-side software, where you're writing something in your dev environment. Maybe the dev environment is running on your dev servers, which is, some server machine in your office. Maybe the dev environment is running on your laptop in more enlightened times. But very often back in these old days, you had dev servers that were server machines either in your office or in a data center set aside from your production machines, but these are just for development. And in theory, they were like the production machines. But anyway, you would run your software there. Maybe you'd be remotely SSH'd into them, and you'd be developing on them, or you'd be deploying to them, or whatever. And you'd work on some product, some feature, and it'd be like, okay, it's good, it works, and people would QA it and stuff. And then you would release it to production, and it wouldn't work. And you'd be like, I don't know, it worked when I tried it. Worked on my computer, worked on the dev servers. Like, what the hell? Like, what do you want me to do? I tested it, I debugged it, we went through QA, people tried it, everything was fine. I guess there's something different about production than my laptop or the dev server, but it's like, it's not my problem. Like, it works on my computer. And the Docker solution to that problem was, fine, well, then we'll ship your computer. Get it to work on your computer, and what we'll deploy is your computer. It's like, well, you're not going to deploy my computer. My computer's a laptop, and I'm running everything locally. How are you going to deploy my computer? It's like, well, if you do your development in a little tiny private machine environment that thinks it's its own computer, and you get it to work there, and we can deploy that thing, it doesn't know that it's someplace different because it didn't know where it was before. It says, I am the one and only process on this Linux machine. I am process ID 1, and I am this server, and I see these files and these directories, and this is a entirely reproducible artifact based on a recipe that says, here's how you build this machine. You start with this operating system, you install these things, you put these files here, you do this, that, like just an automated process that builds this little, you can think of it like as a virtual machine, but for technical reasons, it's not quite the same thing. And that's what you're running in your laptop. And that's what you're running in your dev server. And that's what you're running in production. And all those places where it's running, it thinks it's running in its own little computer. And it thinks your server process is the only process in that computer. And it thinks the user account that runs that server is the only user. Like, it is its own little tiny kingdom where everything looks the same. And that's what we ship. So there's no like, I got it to work on the dev server, but then it goes to production and it doesn't work. It's always the same everywhere. Now, how do they do that, technically speaking? Is it like virtual machines where like VMware, where you're like, okay, well, we're going to, your CPU supports hypervisor, and we're going to boot a whole other operating system right here, and it's going to have its own RAM, and it's going to have its own access to the screen and the hardware, and is that what it is? No, virtual machines are a different thing. The technical details of what makes this different, you should check out the Wizard zine, but basically it uses features of Linux that allow it to run one operating system, but fake out make a little fake world where it thinks that, it's got its own process IDs and its own, user accounts and its own directory structure or whatever. Really, it's just a subset of the things shared with the host thing. And same thing with networking. There's complications about whether it's sharing the networking with the top layer or having a proxy. Anyway, the whole point is it's a feature of Linux that allows this to work in a more efficient way. So you don't have to literally boot a whole other operating system with all the complete repetition. It can use the resources of the main operating system. And again, the technical nuances of how this is different from hypervisor and VMs are not that interesting, but it's the same type of idea. Think of it as a lighter weight version to do virtual machines. So lightweight, in fact, that the way you make one of these with Docker and various other tools is you literally do write a recipe, which is just a not very long text file that says, here is the recipe to build this little machine. And you run that recipe and it makes the container, and you can deploy that container anywhere. There are many nuances to this that make it much more complicated than the simple description. But the simple description was compelling enough. And the old adage of works on my computer, fine, we'll ship your computer, turns out to be useful enough that this is actually caught on in various forms. There's the official Docker thing for the Mac. Apple has its own container system that looks like a Docker compatible type thing. This has been done many times over now because it is a genuinely good idea. And Casey's using it in the instance of like, so you want to run some software on your Synology. I don't know what your Synology setup is like. I don't know how you have things configured. I don't know what your directory structure looks like. I don't know what your user IDs are. I don't know what your permissions are. I don't know any of that crap. How am I going to get this thing to work on your Synology and some other person's NAS and this, like, how? Well, we'll just make a Docker container. This Docker container, if you get anything that can run Docker, the world inside the Docker container looks the same no matter where it is. If it's on your Synology, if it's on someone's Linux computer, if it's running on someone's Mac, if it's running on a Pi-hole, inside the Docker container, it looks exactly the same because the world inside the Docker container is determined by that Docker file formula, and that Docker file is the same everywhere. That is the beauty of Docker containers, and that's why so much is distributed that way, because these stupid systems they have are like, well, you need to have this server running here on this port, and it talks to a server here running on that port, and blah, 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 and you can have mega recipes that were like, okay, I'm going to run 7 Docker containers and they're all going to talk to each other in this way. And so there's a recipe that points to other recipes and you can build up from there. And in that way, you can get something that will run anywhere and you're not debugging like, oh, I don't know how to get that to work on a Pi-hole. I only know how to get it to work on this specific version of Synology. No, it'll run everywhere. Anywhere that Docker runs, this will run because it's the same everywhere.
Yeah, so for me, it's generally speaking, and I'm not, for the record, running it on my Synology anymore. I have a little NUC that runs almost all my Docker containers.
You're proving the point. You used to run on Synology, and now you're running on something that is not Synology at all.
That's a very good point. But basically, when I set up some new piece of server software, generally speaking, and obviously there's, ifs, ands, buts, gotchas, and so on. But generally speaking, if you'll allow me to oversimplify, I tell Docker, hey, this folder, this directory internal to the Docker container, map that to this other place in the host. So if the Docker container is looking for /config, well, maybe the host is putting that in /home/Casey/Docker/ such and such /config. And so you're mapping between the containers world and the hosts world. And usually there's a few like environment variables you need to specify, like maybe what time zone you're in, what user to use and stuff like that. This is all very straightforward. And obviously Todd is a friend of ours, and I know that Todd is definitely capable of doing these sorts of things, and most people are. But you basically configure it in a text file, generally speaking, called a Docker Compose file, and then you say to Docker, okay, run this thing, or in some cases, this suite of things that is in this one file. And it's typically very, very little configuration other than mapping volumes from, or mapping folders, basically directories, if you will, between host and client. And that's about it. And that's how I can run so much server software really, really, really easily. And it's really, really great. You kind of have to, it bends your brain a bit. Even as a seasoned technologist, it bent my brain pretty fiercely at first, but eventually you can see the matrix. And I really like, particularly as John said, server style software. I really, really like installing it this way because it's so easy, so reliable, and so repeatable.
And it's so lightweight, just to give you an example of how this is different from VMs. It's so lightweight that people will distribute command line tools as Docker containers. Like, imagine there's a fancy version of the ls command that has like animations in color or something. Someone makes a fancy version of ls. You're like, I'm not going to boot a virtual machine just so I can run the fancy ls command from it. Why would I ever do that? But it is feasible with Docker because it's so lightweight, because it's not booting an entire virtual machine. Again, see the Wizardzine thing about the various Linux APIs that it uses to confine a process to what it thinks is its own little fake out world. But it's running on the same Linux kernel that is already up and running. There's no booting an operating system happening. And so you can actually run a command line tool from inside a Docker container. It's not the speediest thing in the world. Like, it's better to just have it out and run it, but it is feasible at least to do that. And it would never be feasible to like boot up a VM to do that. And as you noted, Casey, like, you can map into and out of the world of the container with various, configuration parameters of like which directories can see each other, which network ports connect to which other things, all sorts of stuff like that. That's all entirely configurable inside the Docker files and from the command line and hooking everything up. And it's very automatable because these are all just command line tools and text files. And so you can build up on top of that to make these big complicated things. But yeah, it's very useful. Like I think I said when I started taking over maintenance of the ATP.fm website code and everything, the first thing I did was get a Docker container up. This is despite the fact that our production does not run Docker, so we are not doing the works on my machine, ship my machine. We're not doing that, but I made a reproduction inside Docker as close as I could to what we are running on our production servers, because there's no way my Mac was ever going to look like our production servers, which are not running macOS. So I can make a little Linux machine that's running the same version of Linux as our production servers and so on and so forth in a Docker container. And same for all other backend services and making them talk to each other and yada, yada. So it's it's an indispensable tool, because honestly, in the bad old days, I don't know what I would do. I would do what Marco was doing when he was writing this stuff, which is I run kind of the same software and kind of the same versions on my Mac and cross my fingers that when I deploy it on Linux, it'll be remotely similar. Again, I'm still crossing my fingers because like, we're not running Docker in production. And it's not worth us changing to do that because it's working fine so far, fingers crossed. But boy, is it a lot closer running the same version of Linux and the same version of all the software in Docker versus not of Docker versus whatever the hell thing Homebrew is spewing out or whatever you built yourself for macOS. And keeping up with that, the new version of macOS, rebuilding all your world or making sure Homebrew is up to date. Docker is a godsend. I don't know what I would do without it.
All right. Thank you to our sponsors this episode, Squarespace and Zocdoc. Thank you to our members as well who support us directly. You can join us at atp.fm/join. One of the many perks of membership is ATP Overtime, our weekly bonus topic. This week on Overtime, we're going to be talking about OpenAI's hardware, both the announced hardware and the updates to their rumored hardware. Talking about that in Overtime, you can join to listen atp.fm/join. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Now the show is over, they didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research, Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Mastodon, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Siracusa. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
I have some news. I have resumed car shopping. I have not finished car shopping, but I've resumed.
Have you ever really stopped car shopping?
Yeah, exactly. This is like me and TV shopping. Is there when there was no car shopping going on, or is there just an intensity dial?
I guess there's an intensity dial, and it is all the way up to 11. That's a reference, John. So when we last left our hero, I think it was roundabouts of February, I had gone and I had investigated the Porsche Taycan. I always forget if I'm pronouncing that right or not. I had convinced myself that was my next car, having never actually been in one. I sat in it, looked through the rearview mirror, and decided the rear visibility is so god-awful, I don't think I can handle it. Then there's a 2-speed transmission in the Taycan, and I decided I didn't like that either. So I abandoned that plan. And some friends of mine recommended, I understand your BMW experience was not stellar, but have you considered the BMW i4? And I think, Marco, you were leading the charge on this expedition.
I am constantly tempted to buy one myself. I really want one. Every time I see one on the road, I'm like, oh, it looks so good.
Well, except the pig nose. But other than that, I
don't
agree.
care. It looks, and it came in orange. I can get them on AutoTrader in orange. I'm like, oh, it's a good orange.
The i4 sedan came in orange?
Yes, and it came in sunset orange metallic. It's a good orange. I've seen a couple in real life. Oh my god, it's like the best orange BMW has shipped in a very long time on a car that is almost perfect for me. It drives me nuts.
Right. So, the conclusion I came to in February, after having driven an i4, specifically the M50 version, which is their hot rod version, the conclusion I came to is, first of all, this feels like home, which is mildly alarming, but nevertheless, it feels like home. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than my old BMW was in a lot of ways, and some of that is good and some of that is not. It was incredibly fun to drive. I am a pure-blood American when it comes to straight line speed. A more refined individual would care more about cornering ability and so on and so forth. I do enjoy that, don't get me wrong, but the quickest way to put a humongous smile on my face is to just launch me like a rocket ship in a straight line. And so I decided I really enjoy the i4 a lot. And the one I was looking at the time, to be clear, this was used, so was it a Porsche. I also drove the Audi e-tron GT, hated that as well, which makes sense because it's basically a Taycan. All these are used cars. And I looked at one that was, I thought at the time anyway, optioned the way I wanted. But the conclusion I came to was I don't have a problem with my Volkswagen. I mean, it's still, as I sit here today anyway, as I knock on wood, it's still running great. Coincidentally, I'm taking it in tomorrow for routine maintenance, so hopefully they don't have any surprises for me, but it's running great. I have no reason to believe it's about to die as I continue to knock on wood. I have time. And I thought, why would I spend a whole pile of money on a car I don't really need just because I think it's fun? And that's all still true. But I think I'm just over gasoline cars. And I don't mean that in the dismissive way I think it came across. I think the gasoline cars are great. I will always love gasoline cars. But for my needs at this particular time in my life, a gasoline car is just not the right fit. It just really isn't. Now, we're going to put aside, John Siracusa, the fact that any fully electric car means my left leg is useless. And that pains me more than I can begin to tell you. I'm not going to go so far as to say it would pain me more than it would pain John, but it's close. I really don't feel like I want a gasoline car anymore. Now, if you remember, Erin has a plug-in hybrid. Her Volvo XC90 weighs as much as a house. It only gets about 30 miles of range on the battery. But for our needs, 30 miles of range has actually been really freaking great. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can call them up if I get a chance. But I do know, I was looking at this just the other day, in the 2 years that we've owned the Volvo, we have put 220 gallons of gas in it. And in the 8 years, just a couple of weeks shy of 8 years we've owned the Volkswagen, we've put in like 1,500 gallons of gas or something like that, and a staggering amount more gas. And it's just for my needs. I don't need a gasoline car. I really, really don't. Much less a gasoline car that takes premium. Now, admittedly, the Volvo also takes premium, but we almost never run the engine. So the other thing that complicates things is that every time I go somewhere, Erin says to me, "Why are you taking your car?" And she doesn't mean this to be a turd, but take my car, says Erin. Why would we take yours? My car is quote unquote free insofar as anywhere I'd be going without her, I'm almost certainly going to be within 30 miles round trip. There are occasions I go further, but they're few and far between. And so it's become, this sounds more dramatic than I mean it, but it's become a point of contention between us because I like driving my car. I want to continue to drive my car, but she's not wrong. Why the hell am I burning gasoline? Why am I burning dead dinosaurs when her car is, again, air quotes, free to drive?
That's a good question.
And so I think I'm at the point now, I am willing to trade my left leg and sacrifice my left leg and get a battery electric vehicle. And I think the only battery electric vehicle that really fits my needs, wants, and desires, really, really closely anyway, is a BMW i4, most specifically an M50 trim. Since we talked about this in February, a lot of people have reached out and said, "Oh my God, I have one of those, and it's incredible." What's the line from Seinfeld? They're real and they're fantastic or something like that. You know what I'm thinking of.
Spectacular.
There it is. Thank you. A lot of people have reached out and said they're spectacular. And beyond that, allegedly, as I knock furiously on more wood, the BMW electric cars, and Marco, jump in whenever you're ready, are supposed to be considerably more reliable than my former 2011 335 with the N55 motor that was amazing for the 10 minutes it ran, but was constantly broken.
Yeah, they're amazing.
So I think it's time. However, the problem is your boy has desires, and I really, really want a really well-optioned one. And let me tell you, not easy to find a pretty well-loaded BMW i4 M50 on the used market. It's not great, friends. It's not great. And I need a listener to step out of the woodwork and say, I am a car broker, headhunter, whatever. I don't know what the term is I'm looking for, but I'm a car headhunter and I will find you this car. But I have been looking constantly for the last several days because I think I'm ready. I want to do it. Again, I love my Volkswagen, but it's time.
I know this is not going to help you, Casey, but the actual solution to your problem is
buying a new one.
No, as Marco suggested earlier, is wait for the new i3 to come out and everyone gets all excited about the new, even uglier BMWs. And guess what happens? All of a sudden, there's a lot of the old i4s, more of those on the market than there used to be, including the well-optioned ones, because everybody's upgrading to the new hotness. But you don't want the new hotness because it's even uglier.
Well, I don't know that it is actually, but I take your point.
I haven't seen one in person, but I think they're too tall, and I hate the front end even more than the old one, if that's possible. But anyway,
the sedans are too tall. I'm not thinking the SUV.
Yeah, the sedans are too tall. The i3 sedan is too tall.
All right.
In photos, I haven't seen in person yet, so I'll reserve judgment. But anyway, that's going to happen. Those are going to come out, and those people who had leases, people who are like who just got to have the latest and greatest, they're going to be better. Everyone's going to be excited about them. There's going to be all these reviews, but you're not interested in that. You're waiting. You're just there. You're waiting for people to get rid of those old dowdy i4. Who wants the old i4 anymore? You do. That's your time. But unfortunately, you're Casey, and you want a car now. So this advice is falling on deaf ears.
You are 100. You are so. I was talking. I did a guest spot on a podcast, which isn't out yet, and I was talking to the host about how the three of us are basically work spouses at this point, and we've known each other so freaking long that we can push each other's buttons so well. And you are so annoyingly right that I just simply do not have the patience for this. But that is an answer. That is unquestionably an answer.
And to be fair, I'll push my own buttons here. Sometimes patience leads you into my current situation where I'm waiting for a new Mac. It's like, it's not the right time to buy one yet.
Right?
What could happen?
Yeah, but then Ramageddon sneaks in. No, you're exactly right. So, I mean, an answer to this question, especially given the earlier topic in this very episode, is I could lease a new one. But again, for my personal...
Not for long, you can't.
Well, also true. For my personal wants, needs, and desires, I don't think it's a good fit for me. And that's just more personal preference than anything else. And I'm not here to litigate that. That's totally fine. I 100% concede that the easiest way to get a car optioned exactly how you want, assuming they're still making new ones or, a dealer can put their hands on a new one, is to lease it. But I'd prefer not to do that, in no small part because I don't particularly want to spend pre-depreciation money. I'd rather spend post-depreciation money. Yeah. And so I'd love to find a used one, but the problem is I want basically almost every package that it came with, in addition to Aaron's car has ruined me. Why, you ask? Because Aaron's car has ventilated seats.
Oh.
Holy God, ventilated seats are my favorite thing in the whole wide world now. And I really don't want to buy a car without ventilated seats. And I'll give you one guess. What is a single line item, not part of a package, a single line item on the G6 i4 that nobody ticks? Would you like to guess, fellas?
I'm surprised they sold it separately.
I know. I don't know why it's separate, but it's separate.
I will say that ventilated seats reportedly vary widely, not just between car makers, but between models of the same car. So be careful. You may love the ventilated seats in your Volvo and hate them in some other car. So maybe, I don't know, test drive the ventilated seats.
Yeah, I've had them in, I think, 2 cars ever, like one of mine and one of Tiff's. And yeah, they vary a lot between cars. Like the ones, I forget which car I had, but the ones that I had were really weak and like didn't cover much surface area either. And then the ones Tiff had were like amazing on this ancient Lexus sedan she had a million years ago. But like they're just very, very different, as John said. So it might
Don't
not
ruin my
be
moment. Don't ruin my moment.
I mean, are you going to turn down the car if the ventilated seats turn out to be bad, or if you can't get them? Like, I don't think that should be a deal breaker. But what I'm saying is maybe they just suck on that particular model of car.
I get
because
what
the technology involved with them is way more primitive than you think. If you've seen car rebuilding channels and they show what the ventilated seats involved, it is incredibly primitive. But apparently, some people just have better designs than others, and because they change the seat even within the manufacturer, like for a generation, like you'll see the same steering wheel everywhere to save money or whatever. But the seats will be different. Like car makers, like your Golf might not have the same seats as like the contemporary Volkswagen SUV of whatever it was called back then, because they just make different seats for different cars, and that's how you end up with like the good ventilated seats in the Tiguan or whatever. What the hell is Anyway, the good ventilated seats in the Volkswagen SUV, but bad ventilated seats in the Golf. You're like, how can the same manufacturer screw this up? But it happens. So, check them out if you can.
That's fair. But what I want is a very, very specific car. And the problem is there is not a website that I have found that is reliable at telling that website, I would like the following options. And I think a large part of that is because on the G6 i4, there is driving assistance and driving assistance Pro. And so dealers are tagging their cars wrong. The website crawlers are emitting these options wrong. Like, it's just a mess top to bottom. And so I've been spending an inordinate amount of time on visor.vin, which I think our friend Matt Howie suggested, if I'm not mistaken. I've spent a bunch of time on Auto Tempest, which is like an aggregator of a lot of other websites. That currently is my favorite at the time, or as I speak, but I have been looking at all of these. And then what I find myself doing is none of these websites are reliable about options. And maybe half the time, after clicking a million different ways, I can find a window sticker or a rough facsimile of a window sticker, which enumerates all these options, but it's very unreliable. And so what I've started doing, which is not 100% reliable, but seems to be pretty close, is there's a website, bimmer.work, BIMMER.work, and you can plug in a VIN and it will show you the options from that car. So what I was doing is, for each of these cars, I go and I grab the VIN, I go to bimmer.work, and then I go and plug in the VIN, and then I try to scroll through in Command F and see, okay, does ZDY exist? Does ZPK exist? Does ZPP exist?
God.
Does 5AZ exist? Does 4FH exist? And I can tell you,
awful.
It's awful. It sucks. This
This
is why
is the
I
job
need,
for like a shell script.
well, so I need a car headhunter is what I really need. But in lieu of that, while I'm still operating as my own car headhunter, I thought to myself, at the very least, I should be able to have some sort of script or Safari extension that could parse through the resulting page from bimmer.work and at least put like insert a table at the top of the DOM, if you will, and just say, this is what it does have and this is what it doesn't have. So me and my buddy Claude whipped together my very first Safari extension, which I'm not planning on sharing because I looked at none of the code, did not give a crap if the code was good. I just cared that it seemed to work. And so I will put a link in the show notes to an example of this, of me using my little Safari extension to tell me whether or not this particular car has the particular options I want. And in this particular example, the answer is mostly, but not all. And so the question becomes, like, do I cave on some of these options and what do I cave on if I do? This is the first worldiest of first world problems. I am not suffering. Life is great. Don't get me wrong. But golly, it occurred to me that left to my own disposition, left to my own devices, I would buy a car every 2 to 3 years, be it lease, be it purchase, whatever, because I just really freaking love cars. I would do it all the time. Except I've also started reaching out to a handful of dealers about a handful of cars. Let me tell you, you know what the worst possible thing you can do with your time for any reason is? You can go reach out to a car dealer who, by the way, every single fucking one of these pieces of shit are all behind AI like triages.
Oh,
and so
God.
you'll email them and be like, hey, I was wondering if you could give me a window sticker for this or something like that. Hi, I'm Sophie, the assistant, or sometimes Sophie doesn't even identify herself as an assistant. Hi, I'm Sophie. I would love to get that window sticker for you. I will have someone assist me and I'll get back to you. Oh. Okay. Then earlier today, I found a car that I really like that's at a dealer very far away from me, and it's optioned perfectly. I found this earlier today, and I email them, or I use their little online form, and I say, hey, I noticed that you said you will only sell to your own state and the states surrounding you. Is that really true? Like, if I showed up with a check, would you really say no? And Sophie said to me, and mind you, I've never emailed this dealer before. Sophie said to me something along the lines of, oh, hey again, Casey.
Oh,
I'm sorry, what?
God.
So clearly, Sophie is like some national freaking thing that they're all sharing. I mean, not literally, but you know what I'm saying? It's disgusting. Take how bad it was for you to buy a car 2 to 4 years ago, and it's worse now. It's worse, my guys. It's worse. Oh my gosh. So I'm currently in the midst of bickering with this dealer, and they basically told me to kindly pound sand. If I want to get a car from them, which is in the Midwest, I need to ship it. That's the only way they will let me buy it. And I would have to do it sight unseen. And the shipping cost from the Midwest of the United States to the Eastern United States is $2,300.
It's a bargain.
I could get a direct flight to the airport nearest them. It's one of the like 7 airports that I can get to from Richmond. I could get a direct flight for $500 one way. $2,300 to ship this car.
That's not that bad if you consider how much it would cost to ship that car via UPS or FedEx.
Right.
Like, just by weight and volume alone, it's actually not that bad.
Well, but the thing of it is, leaving aside my own personal feelings about buying a car sight unseen, because I think I could get over that, but woof, I don't love it. Don't love it. Do you think, you two especially, do you think Erin's going to be particularly keen on this? And this is not one of those like, oh, my wife is such a buzzkill. She's right.
No, she's right. Yeah.
She's right.
This is not a purchase that you for this much money that you make without seeing the thing.
Right. And so I'm bickering with them, but I think I'm going to lose this fight. I said to them, what if I came to you with someone from a surrounding state escorting me? Because we have a mutual friend that lives in a state adjacent. The 3 of us have a mutual friend that lives in the state adjacent to this particular state. And I thought, is it good enough for me to just show up with someone who can produce a driver's license that says they live in the state next door? And they said, thank you, but no. If we're selling to you in Virginia, you have to go through, I forget the name of the website. I think it's driveway.com or something like that, which is the only way they'll do it. So I told them, hey, all right, if this is the way you're going to be fine, I would love to do that, but I really would like you to take $2,300 off the cost of the car.
How'd that go?
There's no freaking way. They have ghosted me since then.
I'm sorry.
But the problem is that this is the first car that I've found with every single option I want that hasn't been in an accident or had a completely dodgy like Carfax history. It's certified pre-owned, which is also nice because then you get an extended warranty and so on and so forth. It's just, I'm impatient, which is what John initially said, and I am not denying it at all. But I'm also searching for the world's tiniest needle in a haystack that only has but so many pieces of hay in it. And granted, to John's point, there will be more and more over time, but golly, I'd love to be able to just find the car, fly there if I have to, pick it up, and drive it home. I will figure out I said to them, I'll figure out the financing. I'll figure out how to get a temporary tag for it. You don't have to do anything but hand me a title and keys. And they told me to kindly pound sand.
Yeah, so I think if a couple of things are going to work in your favor if you can be patient. Number one is that BMWs come up for sale at the time because BMW owners are car enthusiasts and they always want to change cars. And as John said, a new generation of BMW EV platforms is coming out, and so many people want to upgrade to it. Number two, the i4 hasn't been around for that many years. Most of the leases of the i4s probably aren't expired yet. And the biggest source of used BMWs is ones that are exactly 3 years old because they're coming off lease. Because it turns out people who are rich enough to buy BMWs also tend to lease pretty often because they also like to have new cars all the time. So it's a very well-leased brand. So if you can wait until they are 3 years old, which most of them aren't yet, you're going to have a lot more inventory to choose from. So I don't know when that is maybe like over the next year or two is when that's mostly going to roll through. But if you can be patient, if you just set up search alerts to find all the i4s that go for sale, I bet you can find them when you want within 6 months.
I mean, I think you're probably right. And for the record, the first year of the i4 was model year 2023, which means these are cars bought in 2022. So it's been around longer than you think. It doesn't really negate anything you're saying, though. And I think if I could be patient, I probably should be. But because I want such an esoteric, well, maybe not esoteric, but particular set of options, I worry that I'm going to let one slip through my fingers, which my knowledge of the one, actually it was the one that Marco found that was in just south of Richmond. At the time, not having really properly looked into it, that was optioned exactly right. And in retrospect, I really wish I just pulled the trigger on it. But I think perhaps if I were to go back and look again, it wouldn't have had like ventilated seats, for example. But golly, I feel like I'm boxed. Even though I know intellectually that's not true, I feel like I'm boxed because I know I want something so specific and it's so rare to find it. The other thing that's kind of complicated is a lot of these cars seem to end up in Los Angeles and San Francisco, which I could ship from there. And that would be, I feel like that would be slightly less egregious, although I would still prefer to go and see it and drive it. But The thing is, this car, particularly the M50 version, which is the hot rod version, at best, it has 270 miles of range. And let me tell you, a 3,000 mile journey from San Francisco or LA to Virginia, 250 miles at a time, does not strike me as a particularly fun or quick way to get across the country.
I mean, to be clear, the charging stops are not going to be your problem with that kind of like. Yeah, you'll quickly learn what it's like to have an EV on a long road trip. Spoiler, it's fine. But the few hours of charging you'll do on that trip are going to pale in comparison to the tens of hours of driving that you'll be doing on that trip.
And the mileage you'll be putting on your car.
Right. I mean, that I could get over, but yeah, it's the time. I genuinely would expect, I haven't computed this because I'm not that serious, but I would expect that would be a roughly 3 to 6 day journey or something like that, which is just a lot of time. Now, I work for myself. If I really needed to, I could take my equipment with me and record from the road. I've done it. I did it just a few weeks ago at the beach. Like, this is something that I can solve, but I don't want to be away from the family for that long. And if I'm going to do a cross-country trip, I want to do it everyone. But
don't buy a car in California. Just have a little bit of patience. I mean,
but
you just have to like. When I was trying to find my dog to adopt, I think I looked for an entire year on petfinder.com, looking every single night. You just got to be vigilant. When I got my wife's car, I'm pretty sure I got the only stick shift Honda Civic in this color and trim level in the entire region of New England. And I just sat there waiting. Is there one? Is there one? Is there one? Oh, there is. And you just got to snatch it, which means you're going to be, this is your new hobby is just setting up systems. You can, you luckily you live in the age of vibe coding where you can automate this a lot easier than I could. And you'll just get an alert when one with some percentage of your options appears on the market, and you just got to pounce on it. But it's not going to be today or tomorrow or the next day. Probably you just gotta be vigilant. These things take time.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll see what happens.
And the longer you wait, the cheaper they get.
That's true, but I don't know. I genuinely don't disagree with anything you said, but I genuinely feel like this one that I found in the Midwest could be the one, but the thought of just shipping it sight unseen, and apparently this driveway place has a 7-day money back guarantee. And I would, in this hypothetical situation, I would presumably sell my car separately after I've received this hypothetical i4 that I don't actually think this is going to end up working out. I think they're going to tell me to pound sand. But within the few days of getting this car, I would know, okay, this is good, or oh my gosh, this is a disaster. I need to return it. And as long as I haven't already sold my Volkswagen, then I'm good to go. But it's just, I don't love the idea of buying a car sight unseen. I mean, I did that sort of kind of with my BMW, but I drove up to the dealership. We did a pre-purchase inspection because we weren't buying from a BMW dealer. We took it to the local BMW dealer, did a PPI on it, and they said, no, it seems fine. Turns out they were wrong, but that's neither here nor there. It seems fine. And then we finished the transaction, and that was that. We drove 2 cars home. But yeah, I really, if you are a car headhunter, I know that's the wrong term. If you're a car headhunter and you want to do this for me for less than $1 gazillion, please reach out. I would love to talk to you because this is so freaking frustrating. And for the record, I did ask Claude to vibe code me a whole situation that would a couple times a day go to Auto Tempest and a couple other sites and try to piece together what's new and what's old. And it quickly became obvious that either I am not as good a director as Marco is, or it was just too many moving parts to really get something that worked and worked reliably. But I did try.
You just got to break up the problem into pieces. I'm sure you can do it. Do you have a save search on Cars and Bids?
Not on Cars and Bids. Are these the sorts of cars that come up on Cars and Bids?
Yeah, definitely. I have a save search on, I know this because I get these emails. I have a save search on Cars and Bids for the last stick shift Honda Accord that they made. And occasionally I see those come up and I just look at them. It's a good site for enthusiasts because there'll be a bazillion pictures and all sorts of info on it. And I mean, you still might have to travel somewhere and you still have to pay to trailer it to you and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, add that to your mix of places you're looking. I would add that to the list.
I'll do that right away. One other quick note that I just thought was funny. This is not designed to be a advertisement for Fastmail, but it's going to sound like it, and I apologize. When I was setting up alerts for cars and Auto Tempest and other places, CarMax, for example, I wanted to use what Fastmail calls a masked email address, which is to say, instead of using my actual email address, it's like gobbledygook it's 2 pronounceable words and a couple of numbers at my domain, right? And so this way, once I eventually find a car, which will either be tomorrow or in 10 years, once I eventually find a car, I can just kill that email address. and it all just goes away, which sounded all well and good until I was talking to one of the dealers and they're like, okay, your email is mouse.farts. I mean, it wasn't literally, but you know what I'm saying? Like mouse.farts@caseylist.com. Yes, it is. And that was quite funny to me because I did not expect that to be a complication of using Fastmail's otherwise very delightful masked email feature, which was very funny. I don't know. Somebody find me a car. That's basically what I'm saying to you. Find me a car, please, and thank you.
Yeah, and I think you'll find it just fine within a reasonable amount of time.
I sure hope so, but...
Hey, if you find a dealer that has an orange one next to your white one, I'll fly out there with you, and we'll see if they'll discount them.
There's only one option Marco cares about.
There is a very well-optioned one in orange that's available for sale right now. The only problem is it's in Hawaii.
That's going to be a little bit challenging.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's going to work.
Might be a bit of a shipping charge on that one.